Welcome, Wise Chat. It is Wednesday, October 30th, 2024, and you're joining us for Wisecrack Live. This is the last show before the election. We'll be with you post-election next week, but let us know what you're feeling in the chat. Mike will be with us in just a moment. In the meantime, get cozy, lick that stem. We'll be right with you. Yeah, Sean, as I was saying in the chat, Ted Cruz, that congressional seat race, probably more energetic than the actual presidential race here in Texas. Honestly, Mav, outside of like the Ted Cruz election, there's some local DSA stuff going on, but I'm kind of out of sync with the rest of the larger state. It's interesting to think about what Texas feels because it's just so damn large. Also, yeah, if you haven't voted early yet, highly suggest it so that you don't have to do gymnastics. Copy that, Mav, and nice to hear you too, David. Thanks for joining us today. Jeremy, yeah, actually, Jeremy, I'm kind of curious because I've only voted in Texas. What's it like in other states, or what was it like compared to other states? I also am pretty white passing, so I've never really been hassled about ID despite having a funny last name. Yeah, Mav, as we've talked about a bit on stream before, especially being in Texas, it feels the least energized. And so I'm curious because I do hear from people in other states talking about how there's ads everywhere. I think I heard in Pennsylvania, all the ad spots on like broadcast TV were bought out. So you're not even seeing like prescription drugs or insurance ads. It's all just elections. Sounds crazy. I have seen a few again, just Colin versus Cruz ads on Surf and Tubi and the general like broadly aimed non-specific ad networks, but yeah, just nothing presidential. Oh, but I have been getting Obama on YouTube. Has anyone else been getting that?
Offering to give you jizz. It's where we're at in this country. A mega billionaire tech impresario, cuck version of Tony Stark or whatever, who has the account at America on Twitter, who goes to Trump events and jumps up.
That's his account?
Yeah, that's him. That's his like super PAC, whatever. He made at America. So he is America on Twitter. He has made himself America. Um, and guys, he thinks there's not enough babies, so he wants to throw jizz at you. I'm not kidding. Now, does he say he's going to physically, throw rope at you and your family? He did not say it like that, but he wants to give semen away. He's starting a weird compound for his family. He's like, truly, what are we doing? I want us to all step back for a moment. And this is for the early crowd. If you're here right when the stream's
I have the Daily Beast article up just to kind of scroll through, but you don't have to
yeah,
read it.
feel free. Um, I want us to sit here together and really try to pull back, abstract from the immediacy of our existence, in which we take things for granted because they are in front of us. Remove yourself into a zone of some level of, rationality grounded in basic principles about how the world should work. If we want to for a second, let's be Kantians, and in which we will operate via the categorical imperative, in which we, only want to act in such a way that we would will that our actions become universal laws, metaphysical ethical principles. When you move back a little bit, this shit just seems so dumb, guys. Everything seems dumb. And there's things that we debate about and talk about seriously. And it's like, what are we doing? Like, we're taking someone seriously. We're letting someone have drastic political, social, and technological influence on this country who's like, I love apartheid and I want to give your wife my jizz. Are you kidding me? Like, legitimately, I would rather Juicy J have that level of influence in society. I would rather Project Pat. If you don't know these names, look them up on your music app of choice. I would rather Project Pat be in charge of all of these companies and maybe the nation state as a whole. And, all of this coalesces around election seasons because we just see these people and this rhetoric and the utter absurdity and irrationality of the world we live in, a world in which truth is for all, intents and purposes, kind of an afterthought. For as much as people, especially on the right, bemoan the influence of postmodernism, like they're living in it. They're taking full advantage of the cultural conditions of postmodernism, or as the fallen homie Frederick Jameson would call the cultural logic or cultural conditions of late capitalism. You know, like last night, Joe Biden, who's basically like weekend at Bernie'sing the rest of his life. He's completely sundowning, and of course has a legitimate like speech impediment as well. And he like stumbled over a word, maybe didn't add an apostrophe. And it's one of those things where like I don't care about Joe Biden. I have no desire to stand up for this man. I don't care. Fellow Irish American, I guess, but past that, I don't know you, dog. But you know, I watched the clip. He clearly was not calling all Trump supporters garbage or whatever, but we take these things and we run with them. We know they're not true. And that's just kind of where we're at, Matt points out in the chat, I just looked down, that the Elon stick works. I don't know. Infinity says they fully embraced postmodernism. Dapper Cat says contradictions of capitalism get real loud every 4 years. Yeah, that Juicy J, guys. Eddie notes that he wants to be Genghis Khan. So, this is just like where we're at, and it feels weird. It all feels weird. One of the things, as election season really got kicking, and I'm sure some of you will remember this, we watched a chunk of Adam Curtis's hypernormalization. We all did that together. And I think that was important. And I think since then, a lot of things we've experienced or talked about together, separately, collectively, pick your poison, have sort of borne out that logic that we are living in a hyper-normalized political reality in which there really isn't a set of truth conditions that provide any coherence or normality to, the basic functioning of things. And that's where we're at. And we, have in an election happening in 5 days, 6 days, I know Henry was talking about it with y'all before during the pre-roll, and I've been so contradicted or sort of you know confused about a lot of stuff and the stakes of a lot of stuff. But I will say I had a I don't want to call it a come to Jesus moment last night because we're trying to get to 666. We're not trying to come to Jesus. Although Elon would probably come on Jesus. But you know,
He will mail
I
come to Jesus.
he'll mail come to Jesus, 777 Heaven Drive. But I think that I and a lot of people who have a vaguely leftist, progressive, Marxist, whatever you want to call it, orientation I spent a lot of time being pretty critical of the Democratic Party and Kamala Harris and things of that nature. Not Tim Walz, he's our guy for whatever reason. Even if he's not our guy, we've still made him our guy. And I think the reason like that is, for example, like I think sometimes we're more critical over those we feel some similarity or closeness to, or for those of us that came through the 2020 cycle, so those of us who are at least 4 years old. Saw that we got close with Bernard Henrietta Sanders. We had the sense of hopefulness that something better might happen, and I think that's made it hard in that sense. But I watched the most recent John Oliver episode on immigration last night. I read one of the reports about the guy behind Project 2025. I forget his name, bad guy, about how they have a plan that they've worked with Trump on to basically like criminalize pro-Palestinian protesting in America and on college campuses and find ways to like deport and arrest people that participate in protest acts. I'll just say this. It's like actually kind of scary. I don't know. I think I've myself not indulged too much of really thinking through the implications of a second Trump presidency. We're not a political show. We try to take a critical analysis and lens to culture and politics, but I don't know. I think it would be really bad if Trump won again, and that's what I think.
Yeah, one of the things Kat Abu's white Christian nationalism video brought up about Project 2025 is the sense that like they know who they're gonna fire and who they're gonna hire as far as like
Yeah,
fastballing who they want working in the government in positions that aren't determined by voting. Um, and yeah, the immigration stuff does panic me. Like one side is straight up doing Haitian blood libel and just the worst kind of fascist shit in regards to immigration and scapegoating. So there's kind of a definitive line there. And while it's not the most positive framing of it, I do think on some level I do indulge in the neoliberal resentment punchdown and think it's just very funny that some people would be very angry that a black woman is in office.
yeah. And I mean,
Funny
I'll
in a
be
way
very
where Trump is funny, sure, but it's like, oh no, that baby's gonna hit the nuclear arms button. This is more like, oh, people are mad about this. What?
yeah. And I do think like I think sometimes we do have to remember, and I struggle with this, guys. So I am speaking partially to myself right now, as the great man Michael Jackson once said, I'm looking at the man in the mirror so that I can then go back into the room with all the kids in it. That guy, what a oh man. But like there is a disconnect sometimes between a relatively, and I will say well off only in so much as they have the means to be plugged into culture constantly and living an online existence and at least have the means to live that life. But a way in which I think there's a disconnect between ideal political reality and one having principled political values, and the material realities of some of the most vulnerable people in society. And I'll be real. There was a clip in the John Oliver episode from last week that I watched last night that made me cry. And is that because I'm a beta little bitch cuck? Of course it is, But it's also because it was a video of a girl who looked like she was maybe 6, 5, 6, 7 years old, whose father was forcefully deported. And to be clear, like both parties have done a lot of deportations. Um, who was crying to an interviewer saying she didn't know where she was going to sleep or eat that night. Her dad wasn't a criminal. He was just a guy that took her to this country to give her a better life and worked really hard. And she just kept sobbing and saying, I don't know where I'm going to live. I don't know what I'm going to do. Now, you might say to me, yeah, dog, you're just doing some emotional lib shit. Obama did the most deportations ever in like a year. And you're totally right. But we do know that there's a political party in the United States of America that has people that are like straight up talking about like rounding up brown people and putting them in camps and kicking them off, talking about getting 10 million people out of this country ASAP. And they've leaned into it so much more aggressively than they have in the past. And I just think if you don't exist within some sort of tension here, like what are we doing? I think that I want to be slightly judgmental, not even judgmental, I guess didactic maybe for a second. I don't know English. They'll probably kick me out, but I
Woke
I
YouTubers to the front of the line.
yeah, seriously. I just I don't understand how someone could either be like, if you vote in any way or you don't vote for Jill Stein or whatever, you're not a real leftist. You don't care, and you're just a neo-lib shill. Like, if you really think that 100% in your heart of hearts, I can't really fuck with you. And on the other side, if you're one of these like people who is like fall in line, Harris is queen, she's Beyonce but for politics. There's nothing wrong here. That's not good. Existing in our forced two-party system under American neoliberalism forces some heavy contradictions, and acting as if those don't exist is hard.
Got a question
Yeah.
in the chat from Jamie Edwards.
I have
Wisecrack.
this pulled up. Yeah.
The moral
Oh,
question: what's your opinion if you know your opponent will destroy democracy and they win? Do you temporarily bypass that?
yeah. So here's the deal. First of all, welcome to Wisecrack Live. It's our final episode before the U.S. election. It's October 30th, one day before Halloween. Happy Halloween to all the ghouls and goblins out there. I'm Michael Burns here with producer Henry. Please like the stream if you haven't already. Share it if you want to. You can share two things in this life: YouTube streams and venereal diseases. This one is the better thing to share. We'll be hanging out with you the next couple hours. We're glad that you're here. Your support means a lot. Thank you to everyone who's hanging out in the chat. Speaking of, Jamie Edwards, like Henry just pointed out, moral question: what's your opinion if you know your opponent will destroy democracy and they win? Do you temporarily bypass saving democracy to save it? I guess I'll speak historically here. Democracy is an ideal. I would say it's a good ideal. It's an ideal that I don't know if we've ever fully had, at least in this country. And I think that, trying to get the right way to put this. I think that, and we've seen this before, right? There have been elections in other countries in this world where a fascist or a very bad person is elected. And we know what happens when that happens, right? When that happens, when they're installed, they then sort of use a theatrical version of democracy, a simulacrum of the thing, to maintain power. And we know that sometimes the only way to gain that power back is by more aggressive means. And I think that it would be naive to have a view of political reality, political ethics, political philosophy in which change only comes via like phone banking and voting. I know that's like kind of vague, and we can maybe talk a little bit more in a second, but that's kind of my general answer to that. I'm sure people in the chat have had thoughts as well. I was kind of paused on that one for a while. So let's say, let's see. And I would just say today too, we can get spicy in the chat. We can disagree in the chat. Let's just do it in a way that's fun, because you know what, guys, things are happening. It's going to be a weird next week or two. So let's just, I don't know. Let's see. And yeah, I see
Just ask your
Matt said
spiciest
that's a hard question.
questions. Vent it out.
Yeah. Ooh, vote for Jill Scott. That'd be great. This nation needs a long walk around the park after dark. So I think that would be good if we could all have that together. Thank you for voting for me for president. So Sean Harriman, man after our own hearts, knows that we're going to watch something. And we're going to watch a few things today. So here's today's vibe, guys. We want to watch some stuff and talk about some stuff and kind of collectively reflect on the conditions leading up to. Oh, sorry. Let me go ahead in the chat. Oh, pizza boy. It's a pizza. Hey, it's a lot of the chat. I went from Italian to Borat and I want to die now. You ever say something or you think you're going to do one voice and it turns into another voice and then you wish you were dead? God damn it. I used to do this. Sometimes I would do, and I think this is a thing that happens when I would do a sort of Irish accent and it would end up getting Jamaican and it would just be like, cool. I was riffing off the vocal affect of my ancestors and now I'm doing racism. It's a bad feeling, you know? I would say my Irish accent's pretty locked in at this point, and I will not end up talking about Kingston, Jamaica while discussing Irish things. Someone says my Australian always goes Irish. Australian's so hard. Aoife, if you're watching, maybe you can give me an Australian dialect lesson sometimes. Philip K, I think I saw your email, Philip, and we'll talk about this later. Brought up how it's hard to understand philosophy books, and all I'm going to say is you're correct. We'll check out some comments maybe at the midpoint today. Let's maybe dive in. Let's dive in. So like the stream if you want. Is it Leeja Miller?
I believe it's Leeja. I may be mispronouncing it as well, but yeah.
Yeah, and it's the yes, Trump is a fascist video, right? Yeah.
Literally.
Okay. And I'm just a warning, I'm gonna 1.25 it. I say that so that when we start watching, you don't think to yourself, did dad put amphetamines in my oatmeal again? He didn't. But also, if that's happened even once, you need to get out of that situation, is what I would say. So let's watch the Miller's video. If you don't know her deal, they're a lawyer, a legal person who breaks down society. I would say a more like based legal eagle, and that's no shot illegal eagle. Nice guy, but I don't think Devin has like I would say overtly left-leaning take, and I think Leah kind of does. So let's check this out. And so video's called Yes, Trump is a Fascist. And this has been a big point of debate.
It's Leeja.
Leeja, there we go. The Legion of Doom. Okay, so Leeja Miller. Leeja, if you ever watch this, I don't think you will. I'm sorry that I said your name wrong. And you can call me Mikhail anytime, or Michael, or Mikhail, or that's all I got.
They get one mic.
Yeah. You get one mic. That's actually would be much more offensive to me. Or no, you could call me, hey, Mikey, over here. It's me, Leeja. Hey, it's me, Mikey. Ugh. Some people do Mickey sometimes, and I'm like, that's a different name. What are you even doing? But the fascism thing is real in terms of a real point of debate in the political discourse around the guy, the main guy, the guy with the thing. So let's watch your thing about this. And, what a week, guys. What a week.
Literally a floating island of garbage in the middle of the ocean right now.
Yeah, and if there wasn't an election, I would really want to do an episode this week on political comedy. Maybe we'll save this for later, but I have infinity thoughts on that.
Yeah. I think it's called Puerto Rico.
Out of character for me to speak at a Nazi rally. I was just in Israel, but I took the gig.
As the first Samoan, Malaysian, low IQ, former California prosecutor ever to be elected president.
That's just the yikes, guys. I'm just going to say, even if you don't like Kamala Harris for a variety of valid reasons, doing weird racist phrenology stuff is bad.
It was just a groundswell of popular support.
One more week, y'all. We can do this. Yesterday, Trump held a rally at Madison Square Garden.
What a
in New
shirt.
York. Honestly, I find reporting on
I
rallies
want that
lately to be really
shirt.
boring because, yes, Trump said some batty things, and then Kamala called him a fascist. Great. That's frankly no longer particularly newsworthy. But last night's rally was a bit different, just in the level of racist, bigoted, hateful vitriol, which was turned up to 11. Frankly, Trump is feeling the heat because Kamala is out fundraising him, and she's pulling ahead of him in many polls. So he's leaning into what he does best, saying incendiary things in the hopes that his base will be angry enough to show up in droves on election day. And if there aren't enough for him to win, they'll be angry enough to believe the election-stealing lies afterwards and maybe succeed in their coup this time. And this hateful, xenophobic rhetoric, combined with his connections to Project
What do you guys think is going to happen next week? If you want to let us know in the chat, feel free.
2025 and his calls for mass deportations and attacking the enemy from within.
I think the bigger problem are the people from within. We have some very bad people. We have some sick people, radical left lunatics. And I think and it should be very easily handled by, if necessary, by National Guard, or if really necessary, by the military.
Has many people, including Kamala Harris, sounding alarm bells about fascism. Trump even speaks positively about Hitler and is looking for generals with the same level of loyalty as he had. And so while I think comparing politicians and movements to Hitler and Nazis is a bit overblown generally, and I avoid doing it because it should be reserved for when the comparison is actually particularly apt, I think we have reached a point where the comparison is particularly apt.
I think that's, a bold claim. I'm not saying that in a critical way, but I'm saying I respect the idea that that Miller has the reserve or sort of the reservations of wanting to be intellectually and politically honest, and it seems like it's gotten pushed to that level.
So today on the fascist things Trump has said during his campaign and comparing that to
And fascism is a political philosophy, so we're not doing politics, we're just doing philosophy right now.
Hitler. We all study the Holocaust in school and learn a lot about the aftermath of World War II, but taking a look at the years leading up to the war, the things Hitler said and the way he took power is, let's just say, instructive. And all the more reason to show up and vote this year for Kamala Harris, whether you like it or not, frankly. Let's get into it. Thank you to my partner on today's video, Luna. I've been, for the first time in my life, actually prioritizing the health of my nervous system lately. Of learning everything I could about health, experts online giving you sleep,
no
and even
free
stress
ads,
management.
no free ads,
how your body is functioning,
no free ads,
and meals,
no free ads,
militaristic nationalism, contempt for electoral democracy, and political and cultural.
Okay, so I think we might have missed 2 seconds. I think we're just defining fascism right off the bat. Sure, most of us know what it means, but always good to be reminded.
Liberalism, a belief in natural social hierarchy and the rule of elites, and the desire to create a people's community in which individual interests would be subordinated to the good of the nation. Fascist is seen as an insult and a dirty word today, and for good reason, but in its heyday, it was proudly and openly embraced. Europe's first fascist leader was Benito Mussolini, whose National Fascist Party took power in 1922.
That doesn't mean he's good. I just like doing stereotypically Italian noises.
Fascism spread throughout Europe in the years between the two world wars, largely as a backlash against the results of World War I. Virtually every European country had a fascist faction or party, and many countries saw those parties take power, including, of course, Italy and Germany. There were also fascist movements outside Europe, and I don't mean to be Eurocentric here, but this isn't a treatise on fascism, and I'm focusing on Hitler today, which requires talking mainly about Europe. Now, what makes a fascist? Unlike other political ideologies, fascism is unique because it doesn't have one clear theoretical framework, and instead it adapts to the specific cultural and historical conditions depending on where in the world it manifests. It is generally an amalgamation of a few key ideas. 1. Radical nationalism. In fascism, the ethnically and culturally homogenous core
Nationalism is stupid. Do you guys know, I learned this from watching the most recent John Oliver. Do you know that when you get naturalized as a U.S. citizen, you have to watch a video that plays Lee Greenwood's God Bless the USA? I thought it was like a joke. It's like a real thing that happened. So I know that, and now you do.
Of the nation is the most valuable and central aspect of political life. We must do everything.
Nationalism is just very unchill. Again, I said this abstract thing earlier, but it's wild too when you abstract from the conditions of nationalism and elements of the modern nation state. All of this is just grounded in some dudes at some point went to places on boats or like born in places, and they drew a line and they were just like, mine, not yours, mine. And then everything just like went from there. Like, that's so dumb. Even if we've arrived someplace way more advanced from that socio-politically, and in a sense I'm being a bad, I guess, Marxist Hegelian in my reductive analysis here, but it's just dumb.
Thing in our power to that historical homogeneity, whether real or imagined, as a means of protecting the nation from the threat of outsiders, both external and within our own borders. Number 2, populist authoritarianism. Fascism promotes the idolization and mythologization of charismatic central leaders.
Leaders should not be charismatic. They should be boring. They should be boring little nerds. And I think Plato was right about that.
Leaders who are seen as embodiments of the people's will and of
like no one cool and charismatic should be a politician. If you're like that cool and charismatic, be a podcaster or something.
In itself, which falls in line with fascism's belief in authoritarianism, wherein the leader is infallible and above the law. And number 3, anti-liberal and anti-democratic. Traditionally, fascism expresses its anti-liberal sentiments through a rejection of the liberal emphasis on individual rights and freedoms, and instead advocating for subordination of individualism in favor of the collective fight for the nation. Democratic processes are weak, bureaucratic, and inefficient. The will of the nation must be implemented through swift, decisive action by the idolized leader, who embodies the will of the nation anyway, so let him just do his thing. Unlike traditional conservatism, which advocates for order and tradition, fascism brings a revolutionary fervor and populist rhetoric that alienates traditional conservatives as well as liberals.
Where did they go? You know, all the traditional conservatives, like, because like it's three options, right? Either they never really existed in the first place, they've been so beat down that they've just fallen in line, or I had three in my head and the third one went someplace else.
We're too broke to afford them. They were like a constructed class by the economy that we just don't have space for anymore.
Yeah. So I really miss those guys.
It is more radical, more movement-driven, and as I said, more willing to fudge traditional political ideology in order to achieve the ultimate end goals of radical nationalism and populist authoritarianism. And a lot of the details of any particular fascist ideology differs depending on the specific location and moment in time.
Hey, 666, this works because Leeja has the Reagan Satan shirt on. So everyone focus on the Reagan Satan shirt, focus on 666, focus on the fact that, I don't know, evil is real. It might not be a cosmic principle, right? Evil might not exist outside of us as some dark energy or force. Evil is something that might exist and might be perpetuated by us and our actions and the things that we do. And evil in some ways is just sort of saying, you know, it's a reactionary force. It says no to life. And I think Satan tells us to say yes to life.
When it manifests.
I don't know. One day a real Satanist is going to be in the chat. They're going to get so mad at me. And then if they do, I'm going to say, shut up. You believe in the devil, dork.
Those details generally revolve around scapegoating and fear-mongering,
Sorry,
capitalizing
guys.
on whatever is most scary to the population and giving them a group towards which to target their anger. In
Shouts
Italy and
to the
Germany, the
Boondocks.
fascist parties capitalized on the anger and fear of war veterans, the middle class, and other segments of society who felt alienated and threatened by societal and economic change. And socialists, who were violent, godless revolutionaries intent on dissolving the traditional way of life, like
It's just so boring, too, the way that history repeats.
the Bolsheviks in Russia, as well as Jews who were allegedly involved in, the massive plot to control banks in the world through an underground network, et cetera, et cetera. This trope has been around for a very long time. They were the chosen scapegoats, along with everyone else who didn't fit the mold of the imagined traditional cohesive identity of the nation. So in the case of Germany, that's the pseudoscientific Aryan race, a discredited concept that was invented in the 19th century by racist linguists, as well as a bastardization of social Darwinism, and then adopted by extremists in the 20th century to validate their violent ideologies. And no one adopted it quite as hard as Adolf Hitler. Through the idealization of
Well, I'll say it. And you know what? You guys can get mad at me all you want. Hitler is bad.
the Aryan race, Hitler was able to capitalize on fears of economic instability and communism in the wake of World War I, and then direct those fears towards those who didn't fit the mold. Got a problem? It was probably the Jews, or the communists, or the homosexuals who are predators, or the disabled who are useless eaters stealing your food and your resources. That was an actual talking point in Nazi propaganda. By playing into those fears and othering the people who do not fit the nationalist mold, fascists are able to create a strong identity, an us versus them mentality, which further solidifies that group dynamic. From this emerges what appears to be a safe haven for loyal members, where they will be protected, where there are clear answers for how to solve their problems, and where they can fight for their righteous national identity behind a strong leader that is
Okay, someone said she talks too fast. I did 1.25 this bitch. Is it too fast? Oh, by this bitch, I mean video, not the person. I realized that came off bad. I just meant this bitch in like the thing, like if we were at a party together and I said, let's leave this bitch. I would mean the party was the thing, not the person. I just want to acknowledge that because I don't want to get, sound. I want to get clipped like Biden and taken out of context. Is it too fast, friends? I'll go to normal speed.
above. Okay, now that we have the basics out of the way, let's
Now she
examine
sounds
how
drunk.
fascism manifested itself in Germany ahead of World War II. And I think you'll find this history very instructive. World War
Okay, let's dive in. I'm sure some of you know this. I'm sometimes bad about history. I don't know history very well. We have a video coming out Friday that's on the history of the liberal press that gets at how things that happened in Germany before the Nazis with the media are similar to stuff happening now.
War I led to the collapse of the German Empire and the creation of a new democratic republic. The new German government was forced to sign the Treaty of Versailles, which restricted Germany's ability to build an army or participate in any aggressive behavior, as well as requiring Germany to pay restitution and
If my life depended on telling you how World War I started, I would die.
cede colonies and land. The reparations and
True.
restrictions after World War I tanked
The
the German
band
economy.
Franz
In
Ferdinand
September
got shot.
1923, $1 was worth 4 billion German marks. Soon after, the global economic collapse of 1929 led to deep unemployment, hunger, poverty, and homelessness in the early 1930s in Germany. This level of economic upheaval, combined with a sense that the world was unfairly attempting to suppress Germany and the German people, created a situation rife for backlash and movement building. Movements on both ends of the political spectrum were built, and many attempted to overthrow the new government. This also meant that the new government was deeply divided, making it nearly impossible to pass new laws, and many Germans lost faith in their leaders' ability to govern. Sound familiar? The Nazi Party was one of many new movements that grew out of this post-World War I discontent. And Adolf
I mean, it's the argument too that like a strong sort of people's and working class focused party that isn't reactionary and fascist would be good. Like that having these, and I know that this isn't the example here in Germany, isn't that they had some like soft neo-lib party, but I think that sometimes there's elements of what I don't want to call it the left, like that the liberal center does that in their own way are also like planting soil upon which reactionary fascism can grow.
Adolf Hitler, a young World War I veteran, joined early in 1919.
Bad
The group
guy.
was impressed with his organization and oratory skills, and he became responsible for recruitment and propaganda, organizing larger party meetings and rallies where he would give speeches that made him indispensable to the party and its growth. In 1920, he developed the party's 25-point program, including pushing for an overhaul of the party structure that replaced the Democratic Committee with a single leader with ultimate control. When this restructuring was rejected, Hitler resigned. After the heads of the party realized that Hitler's speaking and organizing skills meant that without him, the party would flounder, they agreed to his demands and made Hitler the party chairman. In 1923, Hitler led a failed coup attempt that involved a march on the War Ministry building that resulted in violence. 14 Nazis died and 4 policemen were killed. Hitler was later arrested and spent less than a
What's the difference though, you know?
year in prison where he wrote Mein Kampf. After this failed coup, Hitler realized it would be more effective for him to take over Germany through electoral means by winning democratic support for his party and getting elected to power. So he got organized. He divided the country into regions, which each had a designated leader, then subsections of those regions, which each had a designated leader, and then even smaller sections inside those subsections, also with designated leaders.
You ever think about how, I shouldn't say this.
Do it.
You ever think about how, I had this thought the other day, like, I think that the reason why some of the more progressive and left parties and political organizations in America don't go anywhere is because, like, you kind of need someone that's low-key a psychopath like Hitler, but like with better principles. You know what I mean? Or to put it in
What
like...
do you mean by psychopath? Yeah, because I do think there's a sort of like a standard narrative of living that you have to deviate from to be like effective. And, you know, that's part of the political program. Everybody wants the nuclear family and the 2.5 kids. They don't want to sacrifice.
Well, I guess what I mean
by
by psychopath here is like you need someone who's like a DC type person. You know what I mean? Like a political strategist who in a sense is like cold-blooded and practical. Who understands how the game works, because I think sometimes progressive organizations are really effective locally and not effective nationally because they're like too good. And here's what I mean by that. If I started a business, a profit-seeking business, it would not do well. Now, one reason it wouldn't do well is because I probably have a bad product, you know? Probably be called like, I don't know, like Cum Fizz. It's a soda that makes your semen stronger so you can reproduce and perpetuate the race or something like that. It'd be sponsored by Elon Musk. It would come in Teslas. You get a can of Cum Fizz in every Tesla. But I would be bad at it because, like, I'm not a smart person and I'm not an inherently good person, but I'm not a bad person. Like, I feel bad when people suffer. I don't want to be mean to anyone. I don't want to be ruthless. I wouldn't want to undercut other businesses. If I knew that my business activity shut down a business and people lost their jobs, I would feel bad, right? I wouldn't be good at it. And I think that there's people like me who are involved in a lot of progressive political things in America who have that same thing. And I think that maybe that's one of the problems, right? Because you have people, I don't know, that's a vague thought. And to be clear, the real takeaway isn't that, you know, DSA needs their Hitler. It's just that I think that there's a sort of like ruthless, strategic mindset that sadly is necessary to play the game of contemporary politics.
Chat's saying more in line with like narcissist or sociopath. Well, Chris is talking about a narcissist who's good at pragmatic disassociation. But yeah, I get what you're saying. You just, if you're accepting politics in good faith at face value, I think there's certain levels of subterfuge and like deception that you do kind of need to gamify.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm done. I'm done, guys. The show's over. Show's over. I've said too much. It's our last stream. I can't wait. If in case anyone didn't see it, we posted a video yesterday, Monday, announcing the launch of Wisecrack 2. You all know about it because you're here. First video is coming out tomorrow. And we were a little YouTube-y in it, and some people thought that I was going to announce that I got fired, or someone left a comment that was like, I thought Michael was finally getting canceled for a wild political take he shared on stream. And I responded with like, no, not yet, but it's going to happen. Maybe it's today.
Leaders, and each to the section leader above them, who ultimately answered to Hitler. Groups were also formed for doctors, lawyers, etc. to infiltrate existing social structures and help the party gain more members and supporters. Hitler also established a new leader for the SA, the paramilitary arm of the Nazi Party. Initially, this paramilitary was a militia made up of ex-World War I soldiers and unemployed men who were disorderly and had free reign over their activities. To give this militia an air of legitimacy, Hitler appointed a strict leader to give the SA a more defined role. The SS was a small subdivision of the SA, originally meant to act as Hitler's bodyguard.
Wild that you could just like start your own army.
The SS was significantly expanded in 1929 when Hitler put Heinrich Himmler in charge, who would lead the SS to police the entire Third Reich. These SS members were chosen based on their racial purity, blind obedience, and fanatical loyalty to Hitler. The more loyal you could prove yourself, the higher up the ranks you'd go. Sound familiar? As the military arms of the Nazi Party grew, so too did the propaganda wing. Joseph Goebbels used simple, effective communication through modern media like films and radio, combined with traditional campaigning tools.
I mean, this is, Goebbels or Goebbels, however you say it. I mean, that's always the thing, right? That the Nazis used, they like just knew how to use media to stoke weird populist sentiment, and they were really good at it.
Like posters and newspapers. The propaganda played into Germans' fears during uncertain and unstable times. These included instilling fear of unemployment in the working class, portrayals of ideals of family and the role of women as mothers, and scapegoating Jews and communists as a source of most of their economic and personal woes. Through this propaganda, Goebbels built an image of Hitler as the strong, stable leader Germany needed to become a great power again. Goebbels was so effective.
This is, so the image right now of Hitler as like the happy dad, this like really does remind me of the video we watched Monday. Sorry if you were there for that, where we watched Jordan Peterson's psychological analysis of Trump and described him as this like empathetic, compassionate family man. So in a sense, it's like Jordan Peterson is doing Goebbels-esque work in like propagandizing Trump as this sort of like, it's like a psychological washing or something like that over his whole thing. And
appointed Minister of Propaganda in 1933. The economic unrest during the Great Depression led to numerous leadership turnovers at the head of the German government, and the success of Nazi propaganda in obtaining popular support for Hitler and the Nazi movement was evident in the growing success in the elections. In 1928, the Nazi Party won just 2.6% of the vote, getting just
like the Green Party
12 seats in the German parliament. 2 years later, in 1930, they won 18%. And
not the Green Party.
2 years after that, in 1932, Hitler ran for president, losing, but with 36.8% of the vote. This turned Hitler from leader of a radical paramilitary organization in the early 1920s to credible politician in the early 1930s. The 1932 parliamentary election gave Nazis 230 seats, with 37% of the vote, becoming the largest party in the German parliament, just 4 years after only winning 2.6%. Hitler, as leader of the largest party in parliament, was named Chancellor of Germany, sworn in on January 30th, 1933. As Hitler's chances of being elected president dwindled in 1932, remember he lost with 36% of the vote, a group of conservative elites, members of the ruling class and new industrialist business class met secretly to back Hitler as
so the business boys met behind the scenes, probably not publicly, to pledge their support. That's nice.
Chancellor.
Buzz Aldrin endorsed Trump today.
Among the group were political leaders and the son of the current president, along with important
That lion bitch wasn't on the moon.
Important wealthy industrialists. Their support was vital to Hitler eventually being named chancellor by Germany's president. The idea being that they needed a strong authoritarian power in place to protect their power and money, and they saw their opportunity in Hitler. Sound familiar? But at this point, the Nazis
Yes.
were just one party in a three-party coalition government alongside a non-Nazi president. In an attempt to consolidate more power, Hitler called for another election in 1933 and went on a propaganda blitz to try to win as many more parliamentary seats as possible. But then in February 1933,
Just in case you're just tuning in, this is Wisecrack Live. It's our final pre-election stream. I'm Michael Burns. I'm here with producer Henry. And by the end of the stream today, we're all going to know what we're doing. You know, how many times are we voting? Where are we voting? What names are we using? How are we getting social security numbers to vote extra, for extra times? All that sort of stuff. We're going to know. If you're undecided, we're going to decide you. If you're decided, we're going to undecide you. Okay? It's a very serious day.
the building was suddenly set ablaze, burning to the ground and instilling panic in the public over the potential terror attack.
That's not good.
A young Dutch communist was arrested for the crime, playing into the Nazi Party's scapegoating of communists and amplifying their fear-mongering propaganda. 4,000 communists were subsequently imprisoned as a result. The day after the fire, the president of Germany signed the emergency.
I mean, again, I'm not trying to be hyperbolic here. I'm simply saying that the arresting communist thing, it's a legitimate plan written by, I think, some of the Heritage Foundation people or the Project 2025 people. Hey, 777, Christ is back, guys. Everything I said about Satan was fake. Ivan, I'm Russell branded by Christ. We'll watch a clip a little bit later today just to really kick the cobwebs off. We'll have to pull it up on Twitter or something like that, where Elon Musk says he believes in the teachings of Christ as well. We'll watch that in a little bit. But like Elon Musk, we believe in the teachings of Christ, and that's why we're here. But now that we're there as well, related to what Miller just said in the video, it freaks me out that there's policies and plans in place to basically criminalize people that peacefully and legally protest in support of Gazans and Palestinians and sort of leftist causes more generally, whether that be associated with Black Lives Matter or anti-police violence protests or anything like that. That's weird and bad. And there's already been happening. Some of the protest laws they have in Florida are getting there, but it's a little weird. It's one of those things where you kind of think to yourself, and I think this sometimes, that's not going to happen. I've lived in this country for almost 40 years. They're not going to start just rounding up all the protesters and putting them up in jail. Well, maybe they will. There's plans to do it.
Urgency.
Also, the thing that really freaks me out is that they want to put, Trump said that RFK, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is going to be in charge of all our national health things. And that's pretty fucked. That maybe scares me more than anything else.
Yeah, Elon doing the whole government efficiency office that terrifies me.
Yeah, I mean, because a lot of people will die if that happens, whether that's listeria outbreaks because of lack of oversight over, FDA stuff, drugs that are good for us being made illegal, drugs that are bad for us being made legal, all types of shit. That would be really bad.
Decree for the German people. Through this presidential decree, Hitler got emergency powers. The decree suspended basic personal freedoms like the freedom of speech, the right to own property, and the right to trial before imprisonment. This gave Nazis a legal and legitimized basis to persecute and oppress opponents as traitors to the Republic, because people could be imprisoned for no reason. The Communist Party and its democratically elected parliament.
Oh yeah, and there's the thing too where Trump said, if you burn an American flag, you have to go to jail for a year.
Members were banned from parliament. The elections went forward as planned.
Here's a bold claim. If any of you have ever burned a flag, shout it out in the chat. I'm curious. I'm just curious. I'm not going to judge you, but let me know.
March, now under the fear of potential political persecution. Many people feared for their safety in casting their ballots. The Nazi Party won 43% of the vote, an increase of nearly 10% over the election held just 6 months before. 2 weeks after the election, Hitler proposed a law to parliament that would give him the power to rule by decree, meaning he could just issue a decree and it would become law, as opposed to proposing laws to parliament for approval. The terror and fear that was still very palpable after the attack on parliament 1 month before, combined with the support of political elites, gave Hitler's otherwise bat-crazy proposal that air of legitimacy it needed. Hitler won over the...
I didn't see it coming that all of you have burned flags before, but thank you for your honesty.
centrist party by promising to protect the interests of the Catholic Church, and with the communist parliament members banned from attending and the newly and illegitimately elected Nazi members of parliament, Hitler was able to get the parliament to pass his enabling law 444 to 94. Again, lending an air of legitimacy to what was an absolutely anti-democratic power grab. That same month, March 1933, the Nazis opened Dachau, their first concentration camp, to house and murder their political opponents. In the years that followed, Hitler continued his work to appear moderate while slowly taking over through nominally democratic means, lending to the illusion of stability and democracy. Tension between the SA, remember that paramilitary group, and Nazi leadership grew as the SA wanted to engage in more overt revolutionary activities, and Hitler had Himmler and others in his ear, making him fearful of a potential SA coup. This led to the Night of the Long Knives in June 1934.
That's not good. That's not what you want.
In which most of the SA leadership, as well as other political opponents, were arrested and murdered without trial. Goebbels, the propaganda leader of the party, created media coverage that presented the attack as a preventative measure in response to a planned coup on the government. Since the SA were seen by the public as being unruly and violent, many saw the attack as a legitimate move by the government to ensure public.
So I don't want to spoil the video we have coming out on Friday. And I will say our video Friday, written by Neil from the channel The Leftist Cooks, lovely Irish couple of YouTubers over there on that channel. They're great. But something that Neil got at in the research for the script is that leading up to this era in Germany, there was a massive consolidation of the press, and in particular, a shutting down of independent press, leftist press, all this sort of stuff, one business guy taking over a bunch of papers, so that the media was more and more controlled. And I'm not saying it's a one-for-one with the example we just saw. I'm not. But it was weird to finish and record that video last week. And then right after that, you had Bezos told the Washington Post they weren't allowed to endorse a presidential candidate. The guy that owns the LA Times say, and just seeing these weird billionaires with business interest basically like control the editorial capacity of the news. It's bad like that. Someone said Joe Rogan is an independent media. I'll say this. Here's a hot take. You probably, yes, big shout out to the Leftist Cooks. Subscribe if you don't already. This might be a hot take for me. And I would say, and just so you know, you should know that I know that a lot of takes I have are bad. I know that. I don't know. I kind of think Harris should go on Rogan. Sean, yeah. I did see his daughter speak out, but I think that's, to me, that sounded like BS. Because there's truly no history in that guy's work of being like anti-genocide or anything. And I'll say this without saying too much. I have an inside line at the LA Times. A good one too. This isn't like a friend of a friend thing. Got an inside line, and I will just say that I'm pretty convinced that the owner is a piece of shit.
Public order. The parliament,
but I've said too much.
Retrospectively passed a bill legalizing the purge as an emergency defense measure. Again, more legal legitimacy. Outside of the military, from 1933 to 1934, the Nazi Party systematically took control of all aspects of Germany, all through what were considered legal and democratic means because of Hitler's decree powers given to him democratically by parliament. He issued the Act for the Restoration of the Professional Civil Service, removing anyone of non-Aryan descent from civil service, including the removal of any judges that were deemed non-compliant with Nazi law or principles.
That's not what you want.
The Nazis replaced the Supreme Court with the People's Court.
Again, I am not saying that it is a one-for-one, and I truly mean that. This isn't, because, sometimes I say that I'm not saying the thing, but I'm definitely saying the thing, and you know that I'm saying the thing, but it's like a mechanism of plausible deniability. In this instance, I really am not saying the same thing, but, I do not think that we're going full, like, racial purity laws in America, but when you listen to Vance, when you listen to some of the people surrounding the Trump campaign talk about, like, illegals, those who aren't from here, like Stephen Miller gave a speech where he was like, America for Americans. And Vance was talking about how, like, we need to kick the illegals out and build homes for real Americans, true Americans, and there's enough language about sort of Western values and the glory of a certain form of Christianity that I would say I think it's fair that there's at least a coding that implies that when they say real Americans, there is a sense in which they're talking about people with, like, let's call it European ancestry to a Christian nation or something like that. And again, they're not saying that part, but I think it's there, you know, and it's not good.
On which sat judges chosen specifically for their Nazi beliefs.
But judges being chosen particularly for their beliefs and their ability to sort of enact an ideological agenda, that's real.
Goebbels was put in charge of controlling the national media, arts, and culture, ensuring they all advocated for Nazi ideas. Then, in August 1934, the president of Germany, the final check on Hitler's power, died. Shortly after, Hitler announced that the offices of the...
Did they kill him? Are there conspiracies around that, guys? Or did he just die? I'm just curious if anyone knows anything about that. You guys are smarter than me on history.
Chancellor and the president would be combined to create one consolidated leader, and that Hitler himself would occupy the role. To once again lend an air of democratic legitimacy to this proclamation, a vote was held for German people to decide whether or not they approved of the merging of the offices and Hitler's new role as Führer. According to official reports, 95% of the population voted, and 90% voted in favor of Hitler. A reminder that there was a lot of political persecution and threats happening at this time. By the end of 1934, the Nazis managed to take over every major aspect of German government and place Hitler at the top with zero checks to his power, all using ostensibly democratic means. From there, Germany exhibited increasingly antagonistic behavior internationally, leading to the annexation in 1938 of Austria and of the northern part of Czechoslovakia that the Germans lost after World War I, and finally...
Like, would Hitler have... Historians, let me know. Is there like a counter history in which if Hitler wasn't so into expansionism, he could have really like kept it going in Germany? Not that that's good. I'm not saying I wanted that, but I'm saying, is that where he really went wrong?
Shout out. Oh, I was just going to shout out to Philip K. Dick's masterpiece, The Man in the High Castle. One of the best novels ever, possibly. And it does entertain what you're asking. Like, how sustainable was the fascist project, really, if they had won?
Yeah. And thank you. Yeah, awesome. Sorry, I'm checking with the chat. You guys are great, saying a lot of good stuff. I appreciate it. Again, and thank you for bringing it back to Project Pat. Good googly moogly. Fascism is not juicy. We'll get back to it again. Wisecrack Live, Wednesday, October 30th. Tomorrow's Halloween. Real spooky. You know what's spooky? Fucking fascism. So we're learning about it from Leeja Miller.
In 1930 World War II. There's obviously...
And Leeja Miller, good channel. Subscribe if you don't already.
Obviously, so much more to this story, but this brief history highlights especially the...
If anyone knows Leeja, let me know. I really, I've been wanting to reach out to see if she would come on our mega stream in December. But sometimes I'm really shy, you know. I hate reaching out to people. I feel embarrassed by doing it. So if anyone knows her, let me know.
The means that is to gain...
And just a reminder, wisecracklive666@gmail.com. If you got longer questions or comments, we'll look at the emails later.
In power within Germany, with the air of legitimacy so strong that to this day, some people still say that the people elected Hitler, which, as we've learned, isn't entirely true. And so all of this begs the question, is Trump a fascist? Well, I hope based on all of the information I've just shared, it's a pretty clear and resounding yes from you, but let me just connect the dots so it's extra abundantly clear. Let's take the core aspects of fascism in turn. 1. Radical nationalism. Check. Trump's Make America Great Again slogan imagines a made-up past as a vision for a utopian future, and central to that is a shared American identity. What that identity is depends on which group you're asking.
Wait, let's do a poll, because I'm curious what people think. But where is it? Oh, here. You know what? I think I'm good at setting up a poll. I'm gonna start a poll right now, guys.
Oh no, you're going rogue. I don't know what you're putting.
Oh, can I spell fascist right? I see. I'm going
FAS.
Okay, here we go. Here we go. Poll is Don a fascist? I'm curious what people think. Not Draper, Donald Trump. Relative to this video, she has. There's a couple more minutes left, but
generally white, Christian, heterosexual family units. This is made clear by the work Trump and his followers do to attack anyone who doesn't follow that mold. Immigrants, Muslims, trans folks, black single mothers, anyone who doesn't fit the mold is open for ridicule, with the end goal being a return to this imagined shared identity. Number 2, populist authoritarianism. Check. When asked, Trump's followers, at least the ones who make it in the clips from rallies, indicate a willingness to completely ignore his words and actions, to completely accept his felony record because he is infallible, he is above the law, he is godlike, and he is not to be questioned. They don't care.
There's a classic cartoon that shows other convicted felons. There's Gandhi, there's Nelson Mandela, and then there's Trump.
Despite his nonsensical ramblings and inability to talk in full sentences, Trump has a charm to him that allows him to win people over and make them feel like he's one of them.
I mean, I do like that right now what she's describing is the same stuff that Jordan Peterson described in that video we watched on Monday. But Peterson was like, it's all real and it's good. And then she's like, yeah, these are all classic sort of behaviors used by fascists.
Despite embodying zero of the same qualities of most of his followers. Project 2025 and Trump himself would have him at the helm of a government stripped of checks and balances, stripped of regulations and government agencies, and stripped of any civil servant who hasn't professed a loyalty to Trump himself. Number 3, anti-liberal. Check.
Yeah,
Trump's
Rod
flavor
makes a good
of
point in the chat.
anti-liberalism is an example of how fascism is able to adapt depending on where and when it's manifesting. This is America, an outward declaration that people should give up individual freedom.
And there's a thing being said in the chat, which I think is interesting, where people are saying that Trump is like a bad fascist, an unconscious fascist, not good himself, but he's surrounded by people that are good at fascism.
Good of the collective is a hard sell in the most individualistic country in the world. So anti-liberalism instead manifests itself a bit more discreetly. Yes, we care about freedom of speech, but only the speech of the right people. Yes, we care about freedom of the press, but we sow doubt in the mainstream media and any media that isn't loyal to Trump wherever possible. Yes, we believe in freedom of religion, but only for Christians. Individual freedoms in Trump's fascism all come with a caveat that render them applicable only to the group of people who fit into the aforementioned made-up traditional identity of the nation. And number 4, anti-democratic, also check. You hear it in the dog whistles that have been adopted by his followers. We're not a democracy, we're a republic. You see it in Project 2025 and in Trump's own professed plans. Fire civil servants who aren't loyal, replace judges with loyalists, get rid of the administrative state in favor of a concentration of power in the hands of the president who can act swiftly and decisively without the inconvenience of regulations, unchecked by other branches or by the will of the people. And when Trump says he wants generals as loyal to him as Hitler had, that is coming from a place of having studied how Hitler did what he did. Studied may be too strong of a word, as I'm not convinced Trump can read words really good, but he surrounds himself with people who can. Like Hitler, Trump has capital.
Trump said his favorite book is the Bible, and he has many Bibles in his home, and it's just his favorite book. I think that's really funny.
On the
did
fears
get a
of his
super
base.
chat.
Astronomical economic inequality, racial.
Pause. Let's check it out. El Supero chat says, let me go back. Do you think Don is a fascist, Michael? I'm strictly loyal to you, whatever you think. You're welcome. David, don't say that. Don't say the last part. No, he says jazz. No, he says jazz. No. I'm going to stand up for David here. David knows that I like playing jazz music. And so what he probably meant is you're even welcome to play jazz music with or for my wife. Maybe his wife is a double bassist, and he's like, you could come over and you guys could jam on some Coltrane standards. I think that's what he meant. David, you can confirm or deny that, but he left plausible deniability with that asterisk. I don't know, guys. I have like a sort of back and forthness on the fascism thing. I think that Donald Trump is a truly world historical egomaniacal sociopath who desires nothing more than power and attention, and that just so happens to coincide with many of the qualities of a great fascist leader. And I think there are people around him who see that and are helping facilitate that. But I don't think that, like, on his own in a bubble, he is a fascist. But I think that fascism just so happens to be a way for him to do that. That's me just saying stuff right now as I still react to the second part of what David said that I'm just going to be reckoning with for a while. And if David's wife is watching this, I'm okay. I'm just here. You're there. If you want to play jazz music, we can play jazz music. Okay? Public setting, jam session, maybe a cocktail bar or something like that. But just so you know, I'm just in this room doing my job. I'm a married, faithful married man. I just like jazz.
Animosity, changing societal norms. Like
I'm the anti-Elon. I'm going to send jazz to everyone's wives, not the other thing.
Hitler, Trump has chosen a handful of scapegoats that can be blamed for everything without needing any
Sending
actual
Pharaoh
evidence to back it
Sanders
up.
records
Can't find
all over the
housing?
country.
Immigrants took it. Can't find a job? Immigrants took it. Feeling unsafe? Probably the immigrants, or the blacks, or the black immigrants.
They're eating the pets of the people that live there.
Like Hitler, Trump and his cronies have infiltrated every aspect of public life in order to take control or discredit it. Trump alone didn't do this, but his supporters have been working for decades to lay the groundwork. For example, the Kochs and their network have funded academic institutions to push questionable free market ideology. They have funded think tanks to push articles and policy around those ideologies, including the
He was just out here doing it. I said it in a response. I mean, I started saying that Project Pat is important to me, so there's Project Pat energy to
Heritage Foundation, creator of Project 2025. They have funded lobbyists to then bring those policies to the politicians, and they have funded.
Here's how, if you never thought, if you think sometimes when I say I'm stupid, you think I'm just being like humble, here's how dumb I am. I just now, for the first time in my life, got that the word lobbyist refers to the fact that they hang out in the lobby. Like when she said it right there, my brain was like, oh, that's what that word means. I turned 40 this year.
Funded the campaigns of those same politicians. Trump and his cronies have pushed propaganda to discredit academics and experts as brainwashed liberals, as communists. They've pushed propaganda to discredit reputable news media as filled with those same brainwashed liberals and communists. Trump has led his followers to believe that their way of life, their beliefs, their livelihood, and their safety is being persecuted by a dangerous, growing tide of leftists and communists who would have their children turn trans and pee in.
We made a lot of videos about this, done a lot of streams about this. That's one of the most egregious lies. The whole that there's like communists and leftists in the government. Like the irony too is like Kamala and co hate the communist and the leftist about as much as anyone on the right does, you know?
Litter boxes, give their jobs to immigrants, get rid of all measures of public safety, and suppress their First and Second Amendment rights. Conveniently, danger is closing in from all sides, and the perpetrators are the very people who don't fall in line for Trump. And all of this is cloaked under a false sense of legitimacy because he was elected fair and square once.
Party toward us,
Fair and
I've
square,
accomplished
however, is
almost
arguable
nothing.
because he lost the popular vote and voter suppression is very real, but technically he won. And now that he's held power legitimately once, he's willing to use whatever tools necessary while attempting to appear moderate and to be operating within the confines of the law, just like Hitler did, to maintain and consolidate that power. And through populism, propaganda, and fear-mongering, he's managed to convince his followers that it's in.
Sorry to pause, but I do relate to David's energy because I just sometimes say real insane stuff about friends, my wife, people who I love, and I think it's funny. And then I'm just pushing it. And then sometimes it gets me in trouble. I'll be honest. Sometimes it gets me in trouble. I hope that David doesn't get in trouble.
To elect him when it's not. All the while, he's backed by today's version of wealthy industrialists.
David, if you do get in trouble, just be like, I have ADHD. Yeah, you can get out of anything with that. I think that was OJ's real defense. He's like, I had ADHD.
Who believe that with him in the White House.
Bad guys, Musk, JD Vance, Peter Thiel, someone in a video is like, you said his name wrong. Guys, if you watch the Wisecrack video, I mispronounce names. It's a thing I do. You got to deal with it. Bad guys. Like, it's not going to be good. And you could add RFK to this or whatever too, right? Like, that's the thing that really freaks the shit out of me. If Harris and Walz win, it's going to be more of the same shit. You know, let's not shit ourselves here. It will be a less progressive administration than the Biden one was. It will be. You can get mad at me for saying that. You can, invite me to seminate inside your spouse for saying that. You can do whatever you want, but that will be the case. But these fucking guys.
Their money and power will go untouched and unchallenged. And on the similarities go. Trump is a fascist. If he wins next week, there will be far fewer checks on his power than there were the first time, thanks to the damage he did during his.
I remember that's something that Kat explained to us on the show last Wednesday. If you weren't here last Wednesday, I think we had a really great conversation with Kat Abu, and someone left a comment, and I'm going to S my own D for a second here. Well, I'm going to S my D and Henry's D. So much as someone was like, yeah, well, someone left a comment, and they were like, these interview episodes have been really great. I don't get why more people I don't get why they're not blowing up a little bit more. And I really appreciated that. I really liked doing the longer interview episodes. In the past few weeks, we've had Matt McManus, a political philosopher from the University of Michigan. We've had CJ the X, one of the coolest, weirdest, most interesting people on YouTube. We had Kat Abu, a political investigator, journalist, video maker last week who has horrible takes on pizza. But I think they've all been really great and informative. So thank you for those of you who've watched those. I know sometimes when we interview someone, not as many people click on it because it's not as sexy as me having a rage stroke over Jordan Peterson. But yeah, but all I'd say is Kat got at some of the same stuff that Leeja is talking about right now in terms of how a lot of the stuff in the Heritage Foundation playbook in 2016, Trump and co did, and the stuff they did then make it even easier now for them to push it even farther.
His first administration. Only through a decisive victory that we can hopefully definitively shut down Trump's power, as well as his challenges to the election results after the fact. But hope is not lost. You do not need a time machine to go back and kill Hitler. You can do your part now to vote against fascism in our own era.
If you have a time machine, you still should.
Go to iwillvote.com to check your registration and set up a voting plan. If you haven't voted already, do you have a plan to vote? Comment it below. It helps to actually write it down. I will be voting on election day because I love being in the action on the day of. So I will walk to my polling place after breakfast on November 5th, and I will cast my vote for Kamala Harris. Is she advocating for the progressive policies I want? Hell no. But she's not fucking Hitler, so she's got my vote. If you want ad-free and uncensored version.
There you go, guys. There you go. That was a Leeja Miller video on is Trump a fascist? Who knows, guys? Who knows? What did
the poll
where did
does?
Yeah, what did our poll decide? Okay, that's it. That's democracy. That's the poll. Guys, I'm going to tell you about one of the dumbest things I've seen recently. So I've been watching a bunch of Jubilee videos for a video that we're doing about Jubilee videos. And one of the most recent ones is a two-parter, and it's like Harris voters versus Trump voters. And let me just say, some of these people are truly idiots. There's like a woman who's on the most recent one who talks about how there's no such thing as okay, she makes this argument, guys. This is a real argument someone makes. She was like, if there was apartheid or genocide or whatever in Israel, if it was an unequal society, then explain this to me. Why are there Arabs that live in Israel, but as a Jewish person, I can't live in Gaza? Why are there no Jews that are in Gaza? Or something like that. Which is basically like saying in South Africa, whatever year or however long they had that, there's black people that are allowed to work in this part of Cape Town, but why are there no white people that live on the other side of the apartheid fence? What are we doing? But then I looked this woman up who was saying the most heinous shit. And it turns out she's a Netflix reality star and a celebrity plastic surgeon that does tit jobs in Beverly Hills or whatever. And then in her side work, she goes and says Zionist stuff on Jubilee videos. There's another woman who said that Planned Parenthood's whole mission is to kill black babies or something. And she's this other LA influencer, the same woman who went viral for saying that if states voted for slavery, she'd be okay with that. Just a lot of wild stuff over there in Jubilee land. Okay, so let's see. Maybe we should just keep cooking for a little bit. I don't know. So we've looked at some Trump stuff, but guys, we got to hear both sides because this is like a Jubilee video. We're gonna find the middle ground. These Jubilee videos are literally we asked pedophiles and kids to find a middle ground. They kind of do that. They're on one side we have Jeffrey Epstein, the other side 17-year-old Thai girls. Can they find a middle ground? What are we doing? We have Joseph Goebbels and a Jewish family from Berlin. What do they have in common? Let's find the middle ground. Because is that good? Do you really think that's the political vision? Do you think that's the ideal, is that we just take people with the most insane beliefs and say that but they're valid and they deserve to be heard too? What are we doing, guys? And we all watch these videos. I watch them. You watch them. We're all part of it. This is Wisecrack Live. It's October 30th. We're one day before Halloween. If you have a Halloween costume that you're going to wear, let us know what it is in the chat. The window I had with the stream just froze, so I'm going to reload it and see if I can see the chat again. Am I there? Are we there?
Yeah, you're coming through.
Okay, cool. Or maybe I could load the chat on my phone in the meantime. I just miss you bastards so much. Hold on. Hey, there I am. It's me. Okay. So,
Mamma mia.
Let's see. If you see me in person, definitely just be like, what are we doing, guys? What are we doing? Okay. So we're here now. Let's check out this Jonathan Harris video on the real story of Kamala Harris. I think we're back out on Johnny Harris, right?
We were wondering if he was afraid last time.
I think you meant to go to the
Guys,
smaller
it
one
did
down the
bullshit
street.
again. Let's not
If
let
you had to
him
be stuck in an elevator with
watch
either
this.
President Trump, Mike Pence, or
What the
Jeff
fuck?
Sessions,
What's
who
wrong
would
with
it be?
Does one of
Why,
us
I
have
guess
to
it's
come
my
out
fault for
alive?
using Safari again.
What does she believe, and what does her story?
Oh
does
yeah,
her
let's pause.
story
Yeah,
teach
turn
us
it
about
off.
how
Turn
she
it
will
off.
govern if elected
Sorry
president?
about that, friends, family, countrymen,
Technical
fellow
difficulties,
Romans.
please stand by.
Oh God. Sorry, guys. Sorry, friends.
Are you using Safari again?
Yeah, I got in trouble, guys. Let me. Gosh. Reminder while we do this, guys, if you haven't checked it out yet, get ready for the second channel. It is officially launching. We have Show Me the Meaning going, doing a great job. They did a great episode last night. It was like a slasher showdown. They had like a poll, and you could vote on, the scariest Hollywood slasher of all time. And on yesterday's episode, I think the first one, pausing. I think I proved why democracy doesn't work because I voted in every level of it, and I have not seen over half of the movies being discussed. So that's where I'm at.
But your voice was heard.
My voice was heard, but not in a good way. Okay. Everyone right now, I want you to bet, say in the chat, how long do you think it would take for me to leave the studio, open a door, run down a hallway, piss, wash my hands, and get back? I want predictions, okay? Because I'm going to do it, and what I'm going to do before I go is I have a stopwatch here. I'm going to set my I'm going to press it when I go. Just guess in the chat, how long will it take me to, I'm going to, again, to give you an estimate, if this helps you guys guess, I'm probably 30 feet from the door. Once I get to the door, 50 feet to the bathroom, 50 feet back, 30 feet back in, and I have to open one door. This is the most Hassan Piker coded thing I will have ever done. Okay. It's Henry's job to, so it's if we lose a lot of followers, also, if a lot of people leave, Henry's fired.
Oh, no.
I'm just telling you that right now. Henry's job is on the line. And by fired, I mean dead. Because this is the mafia. You don't leave. We take care of you. We take you out on the boat like Big Pussy and take care of you. That's a Sopranos reference in case you think I just said something crazy.
Spoilers.
Okay?
You know how many people you just upset with that?
Big Pussy dies.
All right,
okay,
I'm
3,
starting.
2, 1.
All right, chat. Henry is in control. Something I want to bring up, just that was coming to mind while we were watching the Leeja Miller video, is shout out to Luchino Visconti. He was an Italian film director. If you haven't heard of him, look up a little movie called The Damned. It's about a wealthy, liberal German family. They're like steel magnates living in Germany in the 1930s, and the movie's kind of a slow burn about how they fall from being these, socially hip and cool and with it people into aligning themselves with the fascist. It's a great movie about fascism and how people in polite society can end up siding with the Nazis. Oh, yeah, Visconti. Thanks, Lori. Shout out. I also like The Leopard. That's another fun one by him. It's about the Italian transition from monarchy into a republic in the 1800s. The dude was very interested in times of political transition, and both those movies are pretty great looks at just states in formation and transition. Again, The Leopard and The Damned. But for something less serious, I hope everybody's having a good Halloween week, and hope you're watching some creepy stuff. Anyone see anything good in the chat? Right now on Tubi, the John Carpenter classic Christine is going.
Oh my God, 124.
Oh, hey.
I think that's pretty good. And I washed and dried. Who's closest?
I got 125.
125, guys. That was good. Oh, I'm scrolling back. You guys really doubted me. Do you guys not know that I was a borderline high school track star? Oh, Chuck L said 126.7. That's the closest I'm seeing.
Wow, a lot of people were in excess of 2 minutes now that I'm looking back through it.
Ashley Green 130. Soylent System 90 seconds. Minute 30. from voice in his head. 27 seconds. Someone thought I was going to piss my pants and walk back in there. 84. What? A mem, 1.5 minutes. Okay, 1 second. Most of you really thought it was going to take me a while. So there you go. Okay, guys. I pissed. You're still here. Everyone wins. You know, Johnny Harris, we're out on a little bit these days. You know, but something I'm in on. Oh, let's do an unboxing video. We know we have a partner on the stream. They're called Yes Please Coffee. If you order Yes Please Coffee, you get it in like a cool package that looks like this. It says like Yes Please on the outside. I would show the other side, but it says my address. And I don't want anyone to come over and bring their wife and be like, you said you would. You know, you get it and you say, oh wow, I got a pretty little zine. Look at the like color palette there, guys. Isn't that nice? And you open it up and you're like, oh, I got a little essay from Tony. He's the main guy. He's a good guy. There's some text on the back. You get your playlist right there and you open it up and you say, what do I got? I got the 3+1 El Regalito Los Vecinos Ayarza Natural Suke Quota. Why should I try to say any of these words? You know, JD Vance wouldn't let us have any of these countries making coffee. If it was JD Vance was in charge, it would be like Omaha, Wichita, outside Cincinnati. And it wouldn't be very good. This is what it looks like when you get your Yes Please coffee. Yeah, there it goes. We focused on it. Okay. See right there. Very pretty. Very nice beans. And, you know, if you use code Wisecrack, you get 20% off. So I highly recommend that. And you're going to need coffee. You know, if you're going to stay up and watch the election results next Tuesday, you're going to need something to take with your ketamine and your vodka. So maybe get some coffee for that. Yes Please coffee. Go ahead.
What's the state of the Yes Please contest?
Oh, okay, here's the thing. We probably should be announcing another winner this week, and we're not. But we'll give it another week because of the election. Yes Please contest is ongoing. Our man whose name I forgot, was it Hanji? Shit, I forget. One last time. You can submit to the Yes Please coffee contest. Write me at wisecracklive666@gmail.com. Put coffee contest in the subject line. Make something that explains or explores how you like your coffee. We can go back and not right now and watch some of the finalists from last time to give you a sense of what you can do. But folks, people got weird with it. But you can be earnest as well. You could write something, draw something, make music, make a video, make an animation. If you're not like an animator, I don't want you guys to think that we're always going to pick like the people who make animated stuff. It could also be something super simple. But everyone is invited. Everyone is invited to participate in that. Wisecracklive666@gmail.com. Let's watch Harris on Harris. Wow. Johnny Harris, Kamala Harris. Okay. Let's see what he says the real story of Kamala Harris.
Oh, you guys are at the wrong rally.
I'm going to turn down a little bit.
You have to go to the smaller one down the street. If you
Ooh, that's tough. He picked a tough clip right off the bat.
I'd be stuck in an elevator with either President Trump, Mike Pence, or Jeff Sessions. Who would it be?
Does one of us have to come out alive?
Who is Kamala Harris? What does she believe? And what does her story teach us about how she might govern if elected president?
She's the first woman ever to be the city's top prosecutor.
And again, I think that's like the thing people probably have the most, or one of the things I think people are most confused about with Harris is like, I feel like with Trump, we know what he's going to do or what he wants to do. With Harris, I think people do struggle to know like what her vibe is. You know, what's her whole deal? We know what Trump's deal is. We don't necessarily know what her deal is.
Kamala is Brad.
Kamala, you're fired.
Last week we did Trump. This week it's Kamala. So let me show you the rise of Kamala Harris.
Should be asking, are we smart on Trump? We did it, Joe. I'm speaking. If somebody breaks in my house, they're getting shot. We will be prosecuted.
Like the stream if you haven't. And listen, even if you don't like Johnny Harris, we got to give equal time. Oh yeah, this stream's now owned by the BBC. We're in England now. We brought the whole studio, but we're in England, so that's why we have to do equal coverage.
My mother had another lesson she used to teach. Never let anyone tell you who you are. You show them who you are.
Harris was born in 1964 in Oakland, California. Her father had come to California from Jamaica to get his PhD in economics. Her mother immigrated to the US from southern India, landing in Berkeley, California for the same reason as her father: education. Her parents were married and had 2 kids, Kamala and her younger sister Maya. Growing up, Kamala and her family lived in a mostly black neighborhood in Berkeley. Eventually, her parents divorced in 1972, and Kamala and her sister
This ticking clock makes me think that I'm in a Christopher Nolan movie and something crazy is going to happen.
were raised mostly by their single mother. And it sounds like many single-parent households, it was pretty tough. One thing we know for sure is that Kamala's mother was a major influence on her as a child.
My mother was a brilliant, 5-foot-tall, brown woman with an accent. And it was mostly my mother who raised us. So my mother, that was my mother.
And her mother is the origin of this now viral quote.
I don't know what's wrong with you young people. You think you just fell out of a coconut tree? You exist in the context of all...
Now, for those of you who don't know, this is a Marxist incantation. I learned this from philosopher, theorist, and thinker James Lindsay. So just note that if Harris doesn't get it, that this is a violent Marxist incantation that's calling for a communist overthrow of the American government. We have a full video on it. I encourage you to check out if you haven't.
Coconut tree.
Kamala's childhood was happening just at the time the civil rights movement was at its height. This fight wasn't theoretical for her. It was happening in her literal front yard.
We grew up pretty much surrounded full-time by adults who spent their time marching and shouting about this thing called justice.
As an elementary school student, Kamala was a part of some of the first efforts to desegregate schools by busing kids from predominantly black neighborhoods to try to integrate these cities that had been so deeply divided by race.
There was a little girl in California who was part of the second class to integrate her public schools. And she was bused to school every day. And that little girl was me.
Okay.
No, I don't know if you guys remember that moment. It was in the 2020 primaries, a primary where Harris didn't even last to the Iowa caucus. But her main thing was that she was trying to take down Biden and call him racist.
So at this point, you start to see some of these influences that go on to inform the rest of her life. Her
The cool
immigrant
shirt
parents,
Johnny has.
especially her single mother who raised her, the civil rights movement happening around her, and the neighborhood that she grew up in. In middle school, Kamala's mom accepted a job in Montreal as a cancer researcher. She talks about this as being a big opportunity for her mom, but she was a teenager and she was not thrilled to be moving to Canada. Friends at the time describe high schooler Kamala as bookish, bubbly, and to have blended in with everyone easily. After graduating high school in 1982, she enrolled in Howard University in Washington, D.C., where she studied political science and economics.
Great college.
During her time at college, she took on student leadership positions, participated on the debate team, and continued
Oh, she's debate bro.
to show an interest in activism, participating in protests on campus. While in DC, you also start to see her turn more towards politics. She spends both her summers and during the school year interning at government institutions, places like the Federal Trade Commission, or interning for a California senator. She worked at the National Archives. She was a tour guide at the U.S. Bureau of Engraving and Printing.
That's fun.
And in between all of this, she also took on summer jobs.
Tour guiding is like the most fun job I've ever had. Have any of you tour guided before? It's like the sickest job ever.
To make money. The most
Except you
famous
don't
of
make
which
money.
being her stint at McDonald's. Which, like, during this election, people have been trying to debunk or, like, spread rumors that she didn't work at McDonald's, like it's some highly controversial thing. Anyway, the point here is there's a major paradox happening in Harris's life that we start to see. On one hand, she's influenced by activism. She's critical of government. She's protesting it, while also working within old government institutions that...
Like, what does Harris really believe? Johnny Harris, I mean. We should make a video that's the real story of Johnny Harris.
she was often critiquing as unfair. This is a major theme within her life, one you can see in this speech that she gave to Howard graduates in 2017.
You can march for Black lives on the street, and you can ensure law enforcement accountability by serving as a prosecutor or on a police commission. Somebody is going to make the decision. So why not let it be you?
Okay, so it's the mid...
So that's like a very, sort of realist take, right? That the political systems exist as they exist, and like, you know, what we don't need is less cops. We need more good cops, right? I think that's kind of like the general
Yeah.
logic at play there.
That's also kind of a generational thing, I feel. Like millennials
Yeah.
and younger, I think we're a bit more cynical about like you can't change power from within, but I do think boomers and Gen Xers are more sincere about that.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is like I think that there was a generation where that was a more viable option, and you do have like some examples of that. I just think we haven't seen that as much. Us young people, millennials calling themselves young, this is the most trash thing ever. But yeah.
Mid-80s, and Harris returns to California for law school. This is where we start to see more influences. Like one summer, she was an intern at the Alameda County District Attorney's Office, and she gets her.
Mav makes the point that as Midwestern working class black man, he understands this ideology. You know, so listen to Mav when he speaks.
First real taste for how powerful a role as a public prosecutor can be.
I was working on a case and I realized that among those arrested was an innocent bystander. But it was late on a Friday afternoon. The case would not get called until Monday. I pleaded for the judge to come back. I would not leave until the judge finally gave in. And when that happened, with the swipe of a pen, this woman got to go home to her children. That woman taught me that when you see something in front of you that's wrong, you can just go ahead and do what you know is right.
Okay,
say
so
something.
We're now getting to the point that
all I'm thinking about is Johnny's shirt. That shirt looks so cool, but I feel I would look too pale if I wore that shirt.
Got me really curious about Harris. We have this list of initial influences that have informed her life.
Good
Now
question,
we get to
Logan.
the more visible part. What she did when she was.
Logan, by the way, let me know later. Do you go to the Bluegrass Jam in North Hollywood? I'm just speaking just to Logan right now. I have a friend that's going to a Bluegrass Jam in Burbank, and he talked about the NoHo one, and I was like, I think Logan plays banjo at that sometimes. Let me know.
In the public eye, during her career, her decisions, her words, they paint a picture, and I want to show it to you.
Most important things don't come easy, so it's not going to be a cakewalk. There's a lot of work to do.
Okay, but before we dive in, let's define this word prosecutor, which is a word that you're going to hear a lot when you talk about Kamala Harris. A public prosecutor is the government's lawyer. They are responsible for presenting the evidence and the case against people or businesses accused of committing a crime. And here in the United States, they're often seen as hawks. They're tough on crime, responsible for upholding America's habit of throwing millions in jail for nonviolent crimes. Okay? Public prosecutor. Big part of Kamala Harris's life. So after law school, Harris becomes a public prosecutor in California. First in Alameda County.
Well, then bring the bluegrass to Van Nuys, man. Be the change you want to see in the world. That's what Harris would do.
And then for the city of San Francisco, and then eventually for the entire state of California. So now Kamala Harris, this activist turned kind of politician.
I will say, when they keep calling her an activist, they just show her at like a campus protest. That is not bad. It is good to do campus protests and stuff, but I feel like we use the word activist in a way that almost means nothing. You know what I mean? It's like, are you an activist if you went to a protest a couple times? You're an activist if you did an online petition? Are you an activist if you like organize a sit-in? I don't know.
Lawyer takes on the role that is kind of the definition of tough on crime, working to convict criminals, advocating to lock them up, and upholding the status quo of our justice system.
Serious and violent crime, lock them up.
But Harris says that she's a different kind of public prosecutor. She calls herself a progressive prosecutor. Huh? This strikes people as kind of a contradiction.
Are you soft on crime or are you tough on crime? Instead, I believe we should be asking, are we smart on crime?
Again, here in the United States, progressives
activist versus organizer. That's a good way to put it, Logan.
Reform to our justice system. They say that the system is too harsh, locking up way too many people who are disproportionately brown and black men, often for non-violent crimes, and for far too long.
And we have seen this recently on like cities like LA and Philly. Having more progressive DAs seems like it maybe has been good.
That's one of many critiques. And as I mentioned, prosecutors are kind of seen as the ones doing the locking up. So to get through this next section, let's put both of these words on a scale. And as we look at her career, let's assess what she's done that represents the progressive side of the scale, and what of her actions represent more of the traditional prosecutor side. I'm gonna go through the progressive side first, but then I will get to the prosecutor side. So don't forget that that's coming.
Early intervention leaves room in our prisons for the violent criminals who should be there.
First up, Harris says that being a progressive prosecutor means holding serious criminals to account while focusing on preventing crime in the first place.
And I think one way to think about the like progressive prosecutor thing, right, is this idea, and I do think it's kind of like a Gen X-y boomery idea, that institutions are what they are. Like the political and legal institutions of America were handed down from God, and they exist in a more objective way. So all we can do is subjectively participate in those systems and steer the ship one way or another. So like it's this idea that, hey, if the system is what it is, then at least I can be a progressive prosecutor, kind of like this thing right here. And I think a lot of times that means folks who either don't even think about the possibility of a systemic critique or don't have an interest in that, or maybe more pragmatically are like, well, what's the point of that to make actual change or something? I think that's where sometimes there is like a, and someone says he doesn't come to a conclusive point in this video. I mean, that's the thing, right? That's the thing with Johnny Harris. But, and I say that from a sense of like not trying to say like that's like cool or good, but there are logics behind these things. And to be clear, it's easier to run for an office and win the office than to like deconstruct the logic and legitimacy of the office itself.
She focuses on stopping the crime before it happens.
Revolutions
and to do this,
hard.
throughout her career, she focuses a lot on data.
Let's look at the issue that we're
SF people love data.
presented with in California beyond one criminal case and look at the crime problem. Nationally, 75%, 54% to less than 10%, and 43% to over 90%, 70% reoffend.
I see this happening in the chat. I think it's true. A lot of these problems just boil down to like the Electoral College is so dumb. It's just like a dumb system. Hey, if you want to defend the Electoral College in the chat, I want to see if I can get convinced. I'm like genuinely inviting you to as well.
The context.
Oh, and shout out, there was someone who was in the chat on Monday who was like being a little spicy, but we chatted and they wrote an email and I really appreciated it. I'm forgetting your exact name right now and I'm so sorry, but that's chill. I like that vibe.
Here is that crime is one of those issues that easily scares us. No matter your political leanings, every person wants to feel safe. So there's a lot of emotions driving how our justice system works, how we treat criminals. But Harris wanted to change this. She wanted to use the analysis of numbers to help inform systems of justice and law enforcement
use maps
that were more equitable, more rational, and to see in the data, why are these people committing crimes in the first place? She's building public databases.
Let's focus on what we can do to prevent crime before it occurs.
Publishing statistics on crimes.
Elementary school students missing 60, 70, 80 days of a 180-day school year.
Arrest data.
I was told prosecutors don't need to focus on recidivism. I was told prosecutors should not focus on the needs of children.
A public database for police practices.
Did an analysis of who our homicide victims were. 94% of them were high school dropouts. Perhaps untraditional for me to ask the question, but I did. I got the answer.
Oh, and she took this like data-driven prevention effort pretty far, and it got kind of controversial when she came out and said that the state should be prosecuting parents with a crime if their kids miss too much school. And in a few cases...
I don't like that one, guys. I'm just gonna say I don't like that one.
Agreed.
As a kid, yeah, I missed a lot of school, so I would have done that if I was a kid. I would have got my parents sent to jail and been like, "Fuck you guys." But yeah, so I think that's a really weird law. And I think because I'm pretty sure disproportionately targeted like women of color.
She actually
We
did
should
that.
So I
pay
decided-
parents to have their kids
I
in
was
school.
going to start.
Yeah, I just getting older, as someone who didn't like school. Having a kid now, I don't know, man. Maybe this will change in a few years. But my kid is like, I don't want to go to school. I don't know. I feel like if I'm free, I'll be like, fuck it. I'll just call. I'll say like, she got stabbed. She can't go. We're gonna go hang out.
Just start a TikTok account. Be like the Costco guys.
Oh my god, I was pretty late on learning about the Costco guys, but like, never mind.
Prosecuting parents
Never
for
mind.
truancy. Well, this was a little controversial
Domites?
in San Francisco.
We're not far from the
Frank
dome
and my
zone if
staff
people
went
want to get
bananas.
there.
They were very concerned.
Okay, a few more things on the progressive side of the scale here, and then we'll get to the prosecutor side. She fought against applying the death penalty.
Well, I know it's not missing school sometimes. I know it's missing school a lot, but I don't know. It seems like a weird thing I don't know.
She fought big banks and won convictions after the 2008 housing crisis.
We have delivered to California $18 billion in relief for California's homeowners.
She fought and won $1 billion for victims of a predatory for-profit university.
We are talking about Corinthian colleges taking advantage of Californians who simply aspire to
That's a good thing. Taking down for-profit colleges, we like that. Like the stream if you like
achieve
that.
the American dream.
And perhaps her most nationally recognized moment as Attorney General
That sounds fun,
is the
Eddie.
moment where she told the clerk of Los Angeles to begin issuing marriage licenses to same-sex couples, back during when this was a big debate around Proposition 8, or the legality
Let's get that
of
raw
gay
dome
marriage.
for David's
This
wife.
is Kamala Harris. You must start marriages immediately.
Okay, but hold your horses. There's another side to this story. So far, I've made Harris look like this reform-minded, progressive champion as a prosecutor.
I mean, I guess that, yeah, not, okay, sure, a little bit.
But let's look at the other side of the scale.
I took on perpetrators of all kinds. Lock them up.
Aggressively prosecuting violent criminals as San Francisco's first African-American DA.
First, the death penalty. In 2014, as Attorney General, in a
Some of you don't know this, but when she took over, she was like, I want to keep the death penalty, but I want to press the button. And they were like, there's not a button. And she was like, I want to press the button. So she made them in all the prisons in California hook up a new system where there's like a button you push that killed the guy. And then she took a jet around the state pressing all the buttons. And she would like laugh hysterically. And then I guess told Doug it's the only way she could orgasm. It was crazy.
seemingly reversal of her previous actions as district attorney, she actually fought to keep the death penalty in California by appealing a ruling that would have effectively ended it in the state.
I don't like the death penalty.
In another case,
Hot
the
take.
Supreme Court came out and said that California's prisons were so overcrowded that it violated the Constitution as cruel and unusual punishment.
That's sick.
And yet her office supported the governor's fight against releasing prisoners. Over the years, she resisted or fought against some criminal justice reforms. Her office prosecuted almost 2,000 people in cannabis-related offenses.
That's a bad vibe.
As well as defending the cash bail, which critics see as unfairly punishing lower-income defendants. Okay, I know this is a lot of like, we're in the weeds of the justice system, and like with the Trump video, I was able
Let's
to
get
be,
dome
like,
for
in the
David's
weeds
wife,
on,
guys.
like, branded vodka and giant towers in New York City. But Kamala's story is actually this. It's like she has been in the weeds on criminal justice policy, and her critics and her fans debate as to how progressive or hawkish she was in the system. And so that is how we are evaluating her here. I know it's not as fun as watching Donald Trump like be in The Apprentice, but this is her career.
She's California's most...
Like, what does Johnny Harris feel? You know what I mean? Like when he looks around the world, like, what does he feel about things?
Innovative district attorney.
After going through all of these critiques, you can see why some liberals call BS on her whole idea of being a progressive prosecutor, saying that her career was actually built off of maintaining a tough-on-crime policy while sprinkling in some progressive reforms. No matter how you judge all of this, what's clear is that Harris continues to mind that balance that she has her whole life, where she's clearly has earnest progressive values and ideals, but she also is pragmatic and works within the system that she believes.
If you haven't licked the stream, do it, because if you don't lick the stream, Kamala Harris is going to put your parents in jail and give them the death penalty.
Is where she can make change.
I may have missed
Go
this.
ahead.
Did he bring up, didn't Harris keep people in prison because they were cheaper labor for the California firefighters state department to use?
Ooh, I don't know about that. That's extreme.
Which means upholding the status quo. But what this looks like,
Someone fact
especially
check
now that
us.
she's under the microscope of the entire world, no one really knows where she stands. Because there's seemingly
Guys, if you want Harris to win, we got to get dome in the Harris hole. If you don't put the dome in the Harris hole, then the Harris can't win.
contradictory or
That's how we have
inconsistent
fascism.
behavior here. I'll share my read
We've never had dome and hole at the same time.
on that in just a sec. But first,
If you haven't watched the stream before and you're just tuning in and you're just like, oh yeah, no, this guy, he's a very nice guy. He's like a PhD. He used to be a professor. I think it'd be like interesting to hear him talk about this sort of stuff. And you tune in and you just hear me say we haven't had dome and hole at the same time. I get it if you want me to die.
let's see what happens next.
I am excited to stand before you as a proud California.
Drift King, I have not already voted. There's a drop box at the library by my house. I have my ballot at home. I want to do it. Going out of town Friday, so I want to do it before then.
A candidate for the United States Senate.
The election has been exhausting because of the news cycle. I feel like every day there's like 150 news stories that I should be following, but they're coming from all these different news outlets that all have different biases. Luckily, there is a solution for that, and that is the sponsor of today's video, Ground News.
Well, let's skip
Ground
ahead.
News, Harris won the election to become California's next senator. The
Oh,
backdrop
we
of
got
her
Ground
victory
News in our
was
next
a
video.
country, specifically the progressive communities, shook by the election of Donald Trump.
Someone said, does she have any values? So I think like we know that Trump doesn't, right? Just like fucking power or like just like money. I mean, like, to be honest, to quote DMX, and I'm not trying to be silly here, and I know this involves me saying an offensive word, but there's a song that was popular when I was like in middle school, let's say, and the song was called Money, Cash, Hose. And I do think those are President Trump's values, or to be, he wants like money and power and to treat women badly. Those seem to be his values, right? With Harris, it seems a little more anomalous. Like she has like a vaguely liberal set of values in a very like middle of the road American liberal way, but without a clear thing, right? So I think like when we think about recent presidential candidates, like, Bernie Sanders had a thing. We knew what his thing was. Elizabeth Warren, you knew what her thing was. Even Biden, to an extent, had like a thing, like restoring America back to a level of normalcy, and we're just going to do like Obama stuff again. And I do think with Harris, her thing in general is that she's not Donald Trump, and I think it's the election of our lifetime where it's been the most like that. There's a little bit of this in the Hillary and Trump election, but Hillary was a little more forward with policy. And obviously she had a longer time to campaign. Did I just like stick up for Hillary Clinton in any way, shape, or form? Oh, Michael, gross.
What are you doing?
Oh my God. Unlike the stream, kill the stream, shoot the stream down with a fighter jet. F-16s get me. But I think that's what people are having a hard time with to an extent is like, what is she other than the negation of Trump? Go ahead.
I did look up that prison thing, and yeah, in 2011, she was slow on reducing overcrowding of prisons, and there was California was almost held in contempt at the Supreme Court over it.
Yeah. Wait, someone said, isn't she a technocrat? She likes yeah, I think like technocrat makes sense. It's sort of like Silicon Valley data-driven liberalism, and one in which has space for all who participate in the economy.
Do we retreat or do we fight? I say we fight. I intend to fight.
Now, Harris is a prosecutor, a professional legal fighter. And over the next few years,
Neely, that's how I feel.
To grill Trump cabinet officials and nominees as they came before the Senate.
Can you think of any laws that give the government the power to make decisions about the male body? Has the president or anyone
I'm going to be like real. I think she was like pretty good at this job.
at the White House ever asked or suggested that you open an investigation of anyone? Yes or no, please, sir? Perhaps they've suggested.
I don't know. I wouldn't say suggest.
Hinted.
And then, 2 years later,
I stand before you today to announce my candidacy for President of the United States.
during this campaign, like everyone in a Democratic campaign,
it was a wild one too. I wonder like who was pushing for her to run when she ran in 2020. I don't know.
She swung far to the left, saying that she espoused pretty like left-leaning policies, something that has come back to bite her basically every week during this election. But she didn't gain traction, and she soon pulled out of the race.
I'm suspending our campaign today.
But soon...
Yeah, she biffed it in that one. For those of you who don't remember, weren't paying attention, like it was like she biffed it hard.
She got a call from the Democratic nominee to join the ticket.
You ready to go to work?
Oh my God. I'm so ready to go to
Don,
work.
thank you for
And as
double
the vice
voting to get the
presidential
dome.
Nominee, during the debates, especially, her experience as a prosecutor.
Yeah, and I think like Mav makes this point as well. Because of the time she had to campaign, I get to an extent, like there just wasn't time to like put together the Kamala. So yeah, it is just like she's running as Democrat against Trump, you know? And that's why I wonder if people think about this. It's hard for me to imagine a world where she wins and gets a second term unless she absolutely crushes, you know? Because I think the enthusiasm behind her isn't enthusiasm for her, it's enthusiasm against Trump. And I think, you know, if in 4 years, it's her versus I don't know who it would be. I just think there's going to be that's going to be very hard for her unless she does some real sick shit.
Continue to define her reputation.
He said he's going to repeal the Trump tax cuts.
Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking. I'm speaking.
Biden and Harris
The I'm speaking is like is a big thing for her.
won the White
One of
House
her
in
moves.
2020.
We did it, Joe.
But while
That video made me feel really bad.
I may be the first woman in this office, I will not be the last.
Okay, now listen, I'm going to be honest here. When I started reporting this story, I kind of thought that this next part was going to be the
Someone said her campaign was doing okay before the DNC. Pizza, where's my pizza? Said that. I think that maybe what happened there, Pizza, where's my pizza, is there was a level of enthusiasm behind her that involved both shit, yes, it's not the old decaying man, someone who could maybe beat Trump, and in the past, she said some stuff we like. So, for example, when she first took over, I was excited that it wasn't Biden anymore because it seemed for sure Biden was going to get absolutely wrecked by Don. Harris as a senator was markedly for Medicare for all, in some ways for a Green New Deal, and then recently seemed to the left of Biden on Gaza. So I was like, okay, if the worst case scenario, like the stream Get Some Dome, is if we have someone who is better on the environment, better on healthcare, better on Gaza, hey, why the fuck not? That sounds great. But then at the DNC, what we saw was no mention of healthcare, no mention of the environment in any way, shape, or form, and a pretty right-leaning position on Gaza. And then as she did some interviews, we saw a right-leaning position on Gaza, a retreat into a way more fracking oil industry take on the environment, and nothing else on healthcare really. And when it comes to economic policies, it's just been like, we're going to like give loans to black men in crypto that live in certain cities if they know the password. So I think that's been, and I think they like picked Walls hoping that like the Walls vibe could do something, but then they put Walls in the freezer for like 3 months and now he's back out. But like, is there enough time? I don't know.
The juiciest part. Like, what does she do when she's vice president? And it ended up being the least helpful in understanding Kamala Harris.
And the dome's
I've
right
wrestled
here.
with this and concluded that
if you wanted to see it, guys, it's right here. I feel like I'm like a cam model who's like, if you guys want to see the thing, just, give some more money and I'll show you the thing.
I can't exactly
shouts to sex workers. It's a job and you're doing what you're doing.
Learn a ton about Harris from her 4 years as vice president. Partly because it was Joe Biden's administration and the vice president doesn't really like call the shots. And partly because of the task that she was given, which was the duty of fixing the root causes of migration from Central America.
What a wild job
to the U.S.'s southern border. Like, good luck. Like, the mandate was go use American power to fix poverty, systemic corruption, and gang violence in El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras so that people stop trying to come to the United States. I've reported a lot on migration and borders, and specifically in Central America, and I can tell you that one vice president has no chance of making a dent in these issues, especially in just...
And I just want to note, Mav makes a point here, which is basically that, maybe it's the case that she still believes some of those things. She's just not talking about them because she's so desperate for Republican votes. My thought there is still just like, and truly, I'm just some dumb fucking guy. I'm not a high level political analyst, but intuitively, that just sounds like a bad strategy for me. That they're wagering their victory on getting Republican votes. I don't know. And maybe that's an electoral college thing, right? Because if we didn't have the electoral college, maybe they would want young voters and voters of color and stuff like that to vote for them, which would mean a whole different set of values. But because of the electoral college system, it means that we need these 500 people in this part of Pennsylvania and these 1,000 guys in this part of Michigan and maybe these people in this suburb of Atlanta or whatever. And then when that becomes the case, then you have someone running a national campaign that needs to make all of us feel excited, at least ostensibly, that's aimed at like less people than would fill up like an NFL game.
Just a couple of years.
Want to be clear.
In the stands, not on the
in
field.
This region who are thinking about making that dangerous trek to the United States-Mexico border. Do not come. Do not come.
My daughter would say, no. That's what she says now. I tell her not to do something. She goes, no. But then she does the other thing, My daughter might be a psychopath. She does a thing on the changing table. I have this little Chicago Cubs bear. I call it a cubby bear. And I give it to her and I say, now don't drop the cubby bear. And she goes, no, no. Give her the bear. I start changing her little poopy diaper, or her little pee-pee diaper. And she holds the bear up, and she looks at me, and she drops it like a little fucking psychopath. And she laughs, with that joy of a murderer. And I pick it back up, and I say, I'm going to give him back to you, but you can't drop him. She says, no, no, and she does it again. Is this what Hitler's mom or dad had to deal with? Do you see this stuff and you just let it fly? And then, I don't know.
Now, you can read her 5-pillar plan, but when I read it, it just feels...
Didn't legalizing weed come up, someone?
Familiar. Like the many reports with aspirational language about how the US can somehow fix systemic problems in other countries. Stuff like this does not work, or if it does not work quickly. And to add to all of this, the American people seem to misunderstand what her task actually was. And this includes me, and I'm embarrassed to say this, but I, like a lot of people, thought that Kamala Harris was in charge of the border, this border situation. Like she was supposed to fix what we do with people coming to the border. And all I'm seeing on TV is record numbers of migrants arriving to the border. Huge numbers of unaccompanied young people. And not just from Central America, but from tons of countries. Who was to blame for this big crisis on the border? Many looked at the vice president, because wasn't she the border czar in charge of all of this? No, she wasn't. But we all thought...
Yeah, all my uncles were like, she's the border czar. And I'm like, I don't think that is a real thing.
She was. And it didn't help that in one of her first media appearances...
This one was tough.
She kind of waffled some pretty basic questions about this.
This whole thing about the border, we've been to the border. We've been to the border.
You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe.
That was tough. That was tough. That was tough. It's like your wife is like, did you sleep with my sister? And you're like, I did not sleep with Papa John. I would.
Now, to be fair and generous here, I should say that when you look at the most recent data, migration to the US border has gone down quite a bit, especially if you look at people coming from the 3 countries that Kamala Harris was tasked with fixing. And if I were Kamala Harris, I would be touting this.
Yeah, fact check FIMAV. Borders is a real thing. It wasn't her real thing. Again, we're going to have for a little bit longer. This is our last stream before the election. We're going to figure it out, guys. We're going to figure out what to do. Maybe the tone of me, one Michael O'Neill Burns, has been a little glibber all over the place. And it's because inside my heart of hearts, and I have one, I am slightly nervous or weird. Okay, so we want to poll for optimism. Okay, I'll start that poll. It's going to say, will things get better in the next 4 years? Okay, optimism poll, go. But I don't know, guys. I'm feeling kind of bad and weird. I'm feeling like after the first Trump presidency and after COVID and everything that they went down then, probably the irreparable brain damage that some of us have. I just feel like another Trump term and everything would happen. I just feel like it's kind of game over for America. I do feel like that. I'm not telling you that as, a dependable and objective YouTube host. I'm not telling you that as a former academic. I'm not telling you that as the guitar player in one of the top 5 Grateful Dead cover bands in the Los Angeles area. I'm just telling you that as a guy who's an overthinker and is anxious and often depressed and can't stop thinking about this stuff. It is hard to imagine a world where if Trump wins, things ever go in a good direction in this country. And for me, then I'm like, okay, well, if that happens, I'm going to be in my mid-40s by the time someone else comes in after that. And it's just at the pace of political change in this country, there's a certain point where you're like, oh, I will probably die and there's not going to be a real response to climate change. I'll probably die and there won't be a real response to, rampant economic inequality. There's probably not going to be federal health care. We're not going to have a revamping of our public education systems. A lot of stuff. And there is something depressing about that. And I know that it's easy to think about, and someone said he tried to do a coup. He's not just going to go away. Yeah. I don't know. And I think what I'm saying is maybe relative to what Mav is saying. It's just hard. It's hard to imagine a future that rips but who knows? You know what would rip if you saw this sick ass dome I'm hiding under this hat.
Shouting it from the tops as a huge success.
But that's up to
of her
you.
Big role. And while I
Vote
think
for
her
dome.
initiatives of like meeting with the leaders and trying to get more business to Central America to like make jobs and fix these root problems were earnest and well-intentioned, I just truly don't think
feel like
that
Johnny
it's
doesn't
reasonable
like
for
her.
us to evaluate her based on any of these metrics. A vice president has no chance of fixing these deeply rooted systemic issues
Hollywood does
in other
suck now.
countries in just a few years. Okay, I've made that point. Let's move on.
Look, I'm not a young guy.
Do I want to start remixing him saying, I'm not a young guy? Yeah, I do. I want to do it over and over and over. But I had fun one time on stream being a video DJ, and so many of you pulled your pants down, spread your cheeks, and took a steamer all over my dreams. I would never do that to
Joe
you.
Biden is extraordinarily strong.
Bad debate nights happen. Trust me, I know.
President Biden has decided to step out of the race for the White House.
He is offering his full support and endorsement for Kamala Harris.
I accept your nomination to be President of the United States of America.
So, here we are, kind of in modern day. We all know what happens next. Vice President Kamala Harris gets thrust into becoming the presidential nominee for the Democratic Party as Joe Biden comes to grips with the fact that
I will say this. I've tripped walking upstairs sometimes, and he just seemed to really be trying to run up those stairs.
his age and declining mental acuity was a guarantee that he would lose and Donald Trump would be our next president.
I really don't know what he said at the end.
But yeah, and like all of this started too. It just, what a weird election cycle, guys. Like all of it, like Trump's running again. All this started because Biden decided he needed to run for a second term, and everyone around him told him he could do it, even though he couldn't do it. Like, this whole situation is just so, it's silly.
Into that sentence, I don't think he knows what he said either.
So Harris is now in the spotlight.
Like, any of you could have avoided the situation if you had some power.
And voters are wondering how she will be as a president. What does her past, both personal and professional, tell us about how she'll govern? And the answer to that is pretty unclear. Partly because over the course of her career, Harris has shifted and morphed her views based on the system and the situation that she's in. That's what we've seen as we've talked.
Which, to be fair to Kamala Harris, is like, I think why she's been successful to an extent is like she's shifted to like play the game that she was in.
The perfect like
that,
non-ideological entity within the system.
Yeah, and I think we're maybe seeing that there's limits to that game. You know, like limits to how hard you can play that particular game, and I think she's maybe experiencing that now.
About it here briefly. She doesn't have a record that shows some absolute ideological consistency, which has been perhaps her number one critique, that Kamala's record simply is not consistent. And yet, her character seems to be consistent. Her lived experience is as well. So after doing this research on her
on the December 13th mega stream. And by the way, if you don't have it on your calendar yet, December 13th, Friday, all day we're streaming from this studio. We're going to be on a different set. We're going to have a guest, going to have some celebrity guest. We're going to make a Wisecrack video live in front of you. Just like we're going to do a normal video, but it's going to be live, like Saturday Night Live, except not sort of tacitly endorsing fascism. You know, be ready for that, but I'm going to do a video DJ set.
I do believe her when she says,
my values have not changed.
And this election is weird. They're getting weirder every time, but this one's super weird.
And I think especially if Trump wins on the 13th, it'll just be a mad catharsis session where we can just like watch the world burn together.
She's running against a showman, a professional marketer, businessman caricature who campaigns on his non-political achievements, his personality, not his politics.
Real quick, if you need good political music, there's a guitar player and singer named Mark Ribot, spelled R-I-B-O-T. I'll type it in the chat right now. One of my favorite musicians on the planet. One of the only like sort of post-jazz guitar players who on an album will talk about Zizek, which is a real thing he's done. He's like kind of like cool, old school, left-leaning New York guy. And he did a project one called Songs of Resistance, and he did a show in LA last week. I actually won tickets to it. It was really exciting. It was last Wednesday, actually, right after I last saw you guys here in this room. He did an awesome set of Resistance song, including he did this song by the Carter family called like When the World's on Fire or something that was really good. He did a song about John Brown, which was rad because I love John Brown. I I turned to my friend during the John Brown song and I said a thing that I will not say on the stream, but it was real. He did a song about the Empire State Building that ended up being about 9/11. And there was a line in the song where he said something like, people in my country are angry because they don't understand why the rest of the world wants to blow us up. I found that like really poignant. But yeah, check out Mark Rebo if you haven't already.
Policy proposals. Kamala Harris was born to immigrant parents who came to the United States looking for education and opportunity.
Our next stream is going to be post-election.
She pushed her way up through the ranks to where she is today, all without serious scandals or dings to her
John Brown
character.
would have loved
The
John.
only thing we could dig up on her is that she dated the mayor of San Francisco, and that may or may not have helped her like get a job or a position on some
He was much older. But you know what? Do you,
like
Kamala?
insurance board. But this was like a consensual relationship. There was no cheating. Like, it's not very juicy. So regardless of what you think of her politics, her stance on crime, I do think it is still legitimate
Oh,
to
John
consider
Z,
this
my
personal
guy.
character,
Yes, that
especially
solo
when we're
is
thinking
sick.
about the most powerful person in our country, the leader of the country. Because leaders lead with their personal experience as a guide. And this woman has lived a life that allows her to relate to a lot of everyday Americans, something that seems to be in short supply among leaders these days. So I don't know how Kamala Harris will govern if she becomes president. But from looking at her record, I do feel fairly convinced that she has a sense of ethics and morals and values. And I think that is important to consider. So if you are of voting age and you're an American, let me tell you one thing for certain. You are likely to not vote. In this country, only half of the people between 18 and 29 who are eligible.
Wait, if you're between 18 and 20, I'm going to start a new poll. Okay, I'm going to end this one. Let's see, new poll. If you're 18 to 29, are you voting? And you gotta be American to do this one. Sorry to make it so ethnocentric or whatever. Yeah.
To vote actually turn up. So our democracy is totally distorted because not everyone's voice is counted. I'll put a link here where you can go register and find your place to vote. And with that, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Hey folks,
Okay, there you go. That's what Johnny had to say to us about Kamala Harris. You know, oh, Rob, thank you so much. Yeah, for the LA event, we're probably gonna have some people. I just have this thing a little bit where I'm just like, is this how I die? You know, Rob, I know. Rob's allowed to come for sure. Because Rob came to my comedy show last month and was just like a normal, nice guy. So maybe that's it. Maybe if you want to come to the live show in December, you got to come to my comedy show this month or next month. And if I see that you're normal, you're allowed to come here. Not even normal, just weird, but in a non-threatening way. Weird and non-threatening. Yeah, that video is kind of tough. This is what I'm thinking though. Some of you, not you, but some of you, you know what I mean? The royal you want like this objective type of video. Like that's Johnny Harris videos. You know what I mean? Like if you want to watch stuff made by someone who doesn't tell you what they think or feel and that you don't know where their values are operating from, then that's great. But I think that's bad. Like who wants, I like to know where someone's values are. You know, mine are that I have 14 dads and I don't vote. But I think it's tough. Let's do a temp check with producer Henry. Producer Henry, we have, 6 days out from an election. How are you feeling about stuff?
I already voted early, and I'm kind of ready for the day to pass through.
Yeah.
I don't know. I have a personal sense that like beyond the election, I'm gonna persevere and keep going. But there's just so many macro anxieties I think I have in regards to climate change, and also just like where is this economy gonna keep deriving profits from? How's it gonna keep greasing the wheels? Like we have so much like infrastructure and poverty issues going on that it's just like, are there even bodies to keep working after a point? What's the future gonna look like, regardless of who wins in that respect?
Yeah, that's real. I definitely wish that like there was a pill one could take to just go to sleep for a little bit and just get through next week,
Yeah. Also, it's being said in the chat, but definitely, there's more than the presidency on the
Obviously,
line.
yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, I, in fact, was pretty energized against Ted Cruz this election.
Yeah. And I think there are like cool people to vote for in various things. And I do think at the end of the day, another problem with the American
Shout out to
system.
Mike Siegel if you can vote in Austin as well. I'm
Do it.
gerrymandered out of Travis County, so I could not, but
Jesus.
he's been backed by the DSA and is a real cool dude.
Yeah. But I think like, there's you might live someplace. Hey guys, if you live someplace where there's someone cool you're excited to vote for, shout it out in the chat. Maybe someone else in your zone will see that and they will be like, oh, that's cool, So there you go. Let's see. Yeah, but it's tough. And I know we're gonna stream again in a week, and we'll do like a longer show maybe and just kind of see what's happening post-election. I'll check the email real quick before we go. So if anyone shot us any emails, I might. So this is a weird thing. There's a world where on election night I might stream a little bit from my personal account. So I'm just gonna say that is the thing that exists. I think some of you have subscribed over there, just like my name or whatever.
Who was the musician you were telling people to check out? Getting some.
Mark, here. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna find you guys a video and post a link to it. So I was gonna say we could watch it together, but then we'll get copyright struck. I'm gonna find you guys a good Mark Rebo video. Oh, that one I like a lot, but you guys might not like. Let's see. Actually, you know what? Fuck it. I'm gonna give you one that I like. This is a KEXP set from 8 years ago that I like a lot. But something I think he has a project in particular called Songs of Resistance. So I would just say you can look that up. It's on all the streaming stuff. And I'll type his name in the chat again. Mark Rebo, truly one of my favorite musicians. And if you're like a musician, you'll like him very much. If you're a guitar player, you'll either like him or hate him. Thank you for shouting out all the stuff, guys, from where you're voting. So please do that. Let us know. But yeah, so if you want to check it out here, let me do one more thing. I shouldn't do this, but I'm going to. Sometimes in life we do bad boy things. I think I'm about to do a bad boy thing. Hold on. How do I find it?
What are you doing? How
Oh,
are you
it's a
being a bad boy?
thing. It's
Do
a
you
bad
need
boy
Tucker
thing.
Carlson to tell you how much you need to be spanked by Trump?
I do. I mean, a bad boy. I'm gonna spank Trump. Okay, let's see if I can find this. Sometimes I'm just bad at like the right search terms. Okay, here we go. Just hypothetically, I might, from the channel link I'm about to share, do some streaming on the election day. But it would be under my name. I would not be speaking for the company. I would just be speaking for myself. But I feel like I might want a bit of an outlet that evening. So it'll be lo-fi. But just know that I might pop up there. So that is the thing.
Yeah, day of, we're also going to be talking about Civil War over on Show Me the Meaning. So if people want to check that out to get away from the election news that night, check on over at Wisecrack too.
Yeah, and just again, tomorrow we got a video coming out, which I think relates to some of the stuff we're talking about on Eat the Rich Cinema over on the Wisecrack 2 channel. So I'm excited about that. I think you'll like it. It's about movies that try to critique capitalism or say that the rich are bad, but how they're maybe doing something that's not as good underneath there. So, okay, guys, thank you so much. Hit us up at wisecracklive666@gmail.com. Next time we see you, things are going to be different. That's all I can say. Next time we see things will be different. And there is no Case of the Mondays, because honestly, I think the Case of the Mondays is going to be so bad. It's going to be so bad that it doesn't even, you can't even, you can't, it's going to be so bad. Oh yeah, get my channel up to 666 for permanent raw dome. That sounds great. Okay, guys, have a great week. We figured it out. We figured out the election. Everything's okay now. Forever. Bye.
Stay safe out there, y'all. See you next Wednesday.